Okay, everyone, if you could have your seats. I'd like to call this meeting of the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board to order. And hopefully that's not going to keep doing that. The agenda stands as written, and I believe you've all received copies of the July 16th minutes. Hearing no statement to the contrary, could I hear a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Very good, thank you. We are still looking for a zoning enforcement officer, and we're still in the process of looking for a planner to take Art's position. So if you know anyone who's looking for a wonderful opportunity in civil service and community service, we're prepared to offer that. Our first public hearing is at 6:35, but we have one recommendation, one reference. I think we do get feedback from this thing. How we adjust it.
Push it away.
Pretty wet, did I get? Okay, we have one ZBA referral. It has to do with the Terrence Boylan application to add on to an accessory dwelling on the property up there on 631 River Road. It's basically, it's going beyond the 1,200 square feet permitted under the zoning law. And I have a resolution here to read to you, which I think it's the right one. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board, upon referral by the ZBA, the application of Ileana Van Meteren, Terrence Boylan, for an area variance to permit the construction of an addition to an existing residence acts as follows. Finds the requested area variance raises no significant planning or environmental issues. 2, recommends the ZBA rely upon its own study of the facts in deciding the application in accordance with the criteria and procedures set forth by Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-124C and D, including consideration of the input of neighboring property owners. Could I hear a motion to approve? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Very good. We'll send that on to the ZBA. Well, let's see. The other items here are all in presentations. Presentations of the rest of the public. So I'm afraid these are up to sit here and wait for 3 minutes. Anyone have anything they want to throw out here? Yeah, it's important that everything that's stated here is actually on the record. We're being taped, and it's also an audio. So it's very important. If you get up to speak in the public hearing process, you have to come up with a microphone, identify yourself, and then feel free to say what you have to say. But we really do want a full record of everyone's participation in the public hearings that we'll be holding tonight. God bless you. And I'm not taking that. I don't have a cell phone with me. What do I know about these? I would like to take this opportunity to thank the town board for the air conditioning in this room. These things are far more pleasant. You don't want to rush into anything. I didn't know AC was going to last.
Well, how about those Yankees, no?
Yeah, look, right in the toilet with a mask. Let's hear it for New York. Okay, our first public hearing, Barry Nemers, special use permit and site plan approval. This is an application by Barry Nemers for special use plan and site plan approval to authorize construction of an exterior hallway between 2 structures on Rhinebeck, 9 Charles Street, and 6 Corner Street. George, take it away.
Thank you. George Rodenhausen, the Rodenhausen Shaw, representing Barry Nemers, sorry. And this is an application for simply for a connector between 2 houses that Mr. Nemers owned. One is on Charles Street, and one is on Cornell Street, Corning Street. And this one is the one you've seen before on nine. Let me get the addresses right. Charles, which is now undergoing some renovation and upgrade pursuant to an approval that's given to this board very recently. The back of that property is being improved with that overhang. You can see here that it's virtually adjacent to this property very adjacent. But the other building, Mr. Nimmer's homes, is proposed to be connected with a connecting hallway. So this requires site plan and special permit approval because of some environmental overlay district. It's also in the water resources overlay district within 1,000 feet of Hudson River, as is Christie L. Bryson. So we're applying for both site plan and special permit tonight. This schematic shows you the property here, which is on Charles Street. Remember Charles Street, which is undergoing some renovation, and the property on Cornell Street, sorry, Corning Street, which is now presently Mr. Nimmer's house, his home. The connector would run from the back side of the Corning Street property over to the side of the Charles Street house. It is approximately 13 feet wide. It crosses the property line, but of course it would be possible to disconnect. We are not proposing to combine these lots. We're proposing to keep the lots separate so they can be sold separately. This property is shown here on the side view. This is the profile of the connector. It's essentially a shed roof, which is typical of the area. It's an accessory structure. And this is the illustration of Mr. Kopachanski's corner garage, just to get the relevant shapes in the area. So in terms of what is required of this, it's a very simple application. The Rhinebeck Overlay District purposes are fully satisfied by this project. I just want to point out a few of them. Protect and preserve Rhinecliff's architectural and pattern of design while simultaneously improving town amenities. Well, it is helping preserve the scale, nothing else, of this neighborhood by not increasing the size of either house and yet providing some more space in both homes for someone to enjoy. Continue the existing residential character. What does that? Design roofs to be sympathetic with vernacular architecture. What does that? Utilize traditional building materials, and well, we will be doing that in terms of using glass and other materials. It's basically going to look like breezeway running between properties. Limited square footage of new dwellings, well, it's not a new dwelling, it avoids that need. Prevent the building of second or third story additions. So this is effectively creating more space for Mr. Nimmers without putting a second or third story in his house now. So I think it helps maintain the character of the neighborhood. It's certainly not very visible from the street because the garage blocks most of the view of this. We understand Mr. Kopachanski has no objection. He's the nearest neighbor. The only one who could really see it at the back of this building. So that basically is our proposal.
Thank you. Who did the site visit for the planning board?
Eric, Edna, and Richard.
Okay, could you give us your opinion on what you saw?
Sure. Well, you can see, if you look at the drawings up there, that this proposed connector, which is here, if you're standing on Charles Street, you will have no view of what's happening. You'll have a view of some sort of addition there, but certainly you won't have There are, as I remember, a number of propane tanks that would have to be moved. I guess they could even before Charles Street. And that has to be done, according to code, can't be posted windows, etc. So it has to be done properly. It's a very unorthodox application. It appears to be within the zoning law. I don't think that it is a detriment at all to the neighborhood. Do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think that, first of all, I think the renovation of the house is coming along beautifully. The whole thing is looking good. I think this breezeway will be, I don't think it's going to be in any way detrimental. I do have issue with building a foundation across a property line, which they know is possibly going to be taken up again. And it seems to me that it wouldn't be that difficult to have a, say, 4-foot gap between the two sections of foundation, which can be easily bridged by the structure. And then if in the future the lot is sold separately, then we don't have to go in with the jackhammer and tear up the foundation to do it all over again. It will be, each side would have enough room to paint their side of the house or whatever in that zone. It just seems excessive to put down either a slab on grade or what. I'm not sure exactly how they plan on doing it. And last I talked, they weren't sure either. But it doesn't seem like a very good idea to put, concrete across the property line if they know that they want to maintain it for second sale.
There was a stated desire to put heating in the floor, since there's heating in the floor of the house. But it seems to me that
I certainly do.
that should be possible, given Eric's idea of how it's going to be done.
You can certainly pass that along, certainly. CAC.
Yes, so Bob Bell, actually, I'll join you all in.
Karina, you have to sort of.
Yeah,
talk to the
coming up.
microphone.
Hello, I'm Karina Borden, Chair of the CAC. So I'm going to read Bob's notes. Components of this project, as this gentleman stated, are compatible with the applicable SASS policies and the policies in the LWRP. The style will not present any discordant view shed issues from the Charles Street sidewalk. However, he was curious whether or not there would be any view shed issues from the second floor windows of the person across the street from 10 Charles Street. If that neighbors chimed in to say yay or nay on having a breezeway crossing the view that has that. So that would be the only question.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions coming from members of the planning board? Comments, questions from the public?
I can answer her question.
Oh, okay.
House across the street.
Just wait for the comments.
Yes,
You risk your comments from the public.
yes. Well, he is sitting in the public, he's certainly not.
He looks just like the public.
Yeah.
That's the compliment I've had here.
But I have to ask you to go to the microphone.
Sorry.
Dave's name.
I'm Barry Emmers, the applicant here. She asked whether there would be view shed issues from the house across the street. That house has not been occupied for 15, 20 years. The owner lives in Long Island and is still aware of it. She keeps the outside in good shape. The inside, I think, is probably not. But this person used to be the librarian in Rhinebeck. He knew her many years ago. But she's in good health, but not great. She spends most of her time worrying about the New York Mets and things in Rhinebeck. But she's a really nice person. I would not expect to have issues with her. We did not ask her directly, or we did through the regular procedure. We didn't get anything back. And Richard Kopashinsky does take care of her house. Is one of the persons who does take care of the yard and the house. And he was fine with the proposal, so I don't know if he conferred with her or not.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Peter Chiracco, I'm an architect, just to make a technical comment, possibly in response to Mr. Burns. A grade beam could be a way of having the two sides or the two portions of the structure connected but easily disconnected should there be in a position of the two new owners conceivably be in a position of wanting them to happen in that fashion. That would mean not having a continuous foundation. So I don't want to give somebody a solution, but I don't want to have somebody spending all their time digging up a foundation either. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Okay, could I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
No motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. And I have a resolution to read. Okay, the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board here acts. Yes?
Sorry, but what about the possibility of setting as a condition that the foundation not be one continuous foundation?
We can take it up with Bob Wills, who's the architect, but I'm reluctant to even agree to that here. I don't know if that's technically possible. I suppose you can stop it, but I don't know whether it needs to continue for structural reasons.
I guess the issue, the question of it, and I don't know the answer, is since that's more of a construction issue, rather than an appearance or anything of that sort, of zoning area or bulk or things of that sort, I don't know if that's something that we could put into a resolution, not knowing the feasibility or the structural consequences of doing so. I just don't know.
Well, I think you have to think about the eventual possibility, perhaps even likelihood, of two separate owners of those houses. What would be required in the neighborhood to disconnect this thing? Certainly if it has a full foundation. I don't know how you're going to get equipment in that.
Well, you'd have to go in there with a jackhammer by hand and take it out piece by piece. You would not do the equipment.
Well, yeah, I really don't think it needs to be that complicated, but, you know, I'm not in a position, I mean, I am an engineer and I can design things like this, but I'm not in a position here to really talk about that, other than to know in my own mind that it's certainly feasible and easily done.
We'll be happy to investigate it if that's required in the resolution.
Well, my opinion on this is that I think Eric's concern is a good one. I think it's a concern that makes sense. My concern about it is that in terms of your authority to place conditions on approval, there's to be a nexus between the condition and the goals of the zoning law. And I understand the goal, I think I understand the goal that your suggestion is trying to accomplish, which is to make it easier to change this back to a situation where both pieces can be sold. And that certainly would solve the practical issue and save everybody some time and noise. But as far as the relationship to the zoning, well, I think that the nexus is tenuous. So my suggestion to you would be, I think it's a good suggestion to make. I think if the applicant's willing to consider it voluntarily, I think that's a good idea. I think everyone understands why it makes sense, but I'm not in favor of it being attached to the condition.
Is that, are you comfortable with that? And I think it's certainly, since it would be in the best interests, you know, to look into it, if it can indeed be done.
We want to keep both properties marketable, so
Correct.
having a way to separate this if necessary is important to us.
That's going to be probably one of the first things buyers are going to want to know anyway.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I will, are there any other questions, anything else anyone else would like to state before? Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts on applications by various use for special use permit and site plan review and approval under Town Code Chapter 125 zoning, Section 12568DB, 12569, and 125.73b, authorized construction of exterior hallway between dwellings at 9 Charles Street and 6 Corning Street in the Rhinecliff Hamlet and Rhinecliff Overlay zoning districts, the local waterfront revitalization area, Hudson River Historic Landmarks District, and the States District Scenic Statewide Significance. We reaffirm our prior classification of proposed action as unlisted under secret, for which further environmental quality review is precluded. With regards to the policies of the town's LWRP, find that proposed actions as depicted and/or described in the above referenced submissions are consistent with those policies. With respect to the application for special permit to authorize work, find proposed work and intended uses to be consistent with the general standards for all special permit uses set forth in Town Code Chapter 125, Section 12567. Finds the proposed work to have no adverse impact on the community character, architectural heritage of the Rhinebeck hamlet, or objectives stated in Section 12569B. C, grants the requested special use permit conditional upon receipt of site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, approves the application inclusive of the site plan and architectural drawings prepared by Catherine Whitman. Is she the one? She didn't. Bob Wills, yes, that's what I thought. Bob Wills. B, authorizes the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above-cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of below conditions and/or requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. Submission of the above-cited drawing in the form and numbers specified within Town Code Chapter 125, Section 12578B, except as may be modified to a lesser number by the chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements, and including thereon all required stamps, seals, and certifications. 2, payment of any outstanding fees and/or reimbursable amounts due to the town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of the application subject to this resolution. Taking this action, the planning board further authorizes the town's zoning enforcement officer and/or building inspector, upon receipt of the above-cited drawing stamped and signed by the chair, to issue first a building permit and subsequent a certificate of occupancy use of the proposed exterior hallway upon his determination both the terms of this resolution and all other applicable codes, laws, rules, and regulations, including but not limited to provisions of the New York State Uniform Fire and Building Code, and the purview of the CEO and/or building inspector have been satisfied. Do I hear a motion to approve? Second. I will poll the board. Put on my glasses. Eric?
Aye.
Edna? Sharon?
Aye.
Melody? Woody? Aye. And I vote aye. So 6 yes and 1 not present. Okay, our next public hearing is Chris and Katie Weil. And I have, this is the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board. This application is for special use permit and site plan review and approval. Submitted in the matter of a proposed conversion of an existing barn to a new principal single-family dwelling and the conversion of the existing principal dwelling to accessory structure for use as a guest house on the 12.534 acre parcel in the RC5 district. Being subject to an application for area variance in the matter of floor area of the detached accessory structure, and other non-compliances by the zoning administrator accepted for processing by the ZBA, with said variance is granted by the ZBA on May 16, 2018. All is depicted on the site plan and supporting documents prepared by Mark Lewinsky, EDNLS. Take a look, Mark. What? Oh, yeah, probably don't. Melody reminded me, there was another application for a different driveway, alters the driveway. There's a separate application. The applicants have withdrawn that application. They will be using the existing driveway. One of the conditions is that the stone wall that was reached to put in the new driveway be restored to its original condition to ensure that the new driveway will not be used. Thank you.
Good evening, Mark Lewinsky, representing Chris and Katie Weil. As Michael mentioned, this is a continuation of a single public hearing. Last meeting we had, there were actually 2 applications that were up for consideration by this board. The one which is being continued tonight for the site plan and special permit application for accessory dwelling. And then also there was an application for construction of a new driveway, which was a special permit application for major excavation. The application for the new driveway has been withdrawn by the applicant. So this is merely a continuation of a public hearing that we probably started 2 or 3 months ago for the application for site plan special permit for an accessory structure. As noted in the announcement, that this application required consideration by the town zoning board of appeals. all area variances that were applied for were granted for this particular application. So that brings this application back to the planning board for its consideration of the site plan special permit. I know, I've noted changes on the site plan, and I just given you as a reduced copy of that. Previous site plan had the proposed driveway that has been removed, and I've noted it as removed on the revisions. And then also what occurred as I took over this application, I also took over the application to the Dutchess County Department of Health for the approval of on-site water supply and sewage disposal for what's now going to be the new residence. And if any of the board members want me to go over the entire application, then I will. But it's, so I made an application to the health department for water supply and sewage disposal for the barn, which is going to be the residence on the property. Once the initial review began, I was contacted by the health department, and they indicated that the original engineer who was in this application did not do any analysis or field work for design of a reserve area for what's going to be the accessory structure, which is now the principal residence on the property. So I did some additional field testing to enable me to do that design. And if you noted previously that, and so that area is shown just to the north of the existing driveway. Previous site plan that I had shown to this board, I was using a little more area of the existing driveway since it was going to be removed. But I have sufficient area now to design this reserve area for the existing residence. It does not have to be installed. It's merely it's a design exercise to demonstrate to the health department that a septic system meeting the current standards of the Dutchess County Health Department can be designed and approved on the property. So I also note that change. It's been slid to the north of it. And those plans are being developed for submission to the health department. And so I note the change to the site plan is the removal of the proposed driveway. The zoning enforcement officer issued a letter once we made an application for made a request to remove the proposed driveway. There's a letter in the file noting that, and then noting the requirement to rebuild a stone wall in that section of Fortburg Road where it was previously disturbed. I also note that I removed any proposed landscaping on the north side of this property in order to screen any lights from the proposed driveway for the neighbors to the north. Those are the only changes I've made since the last meeting.
So we're still waiting to hear from the Board of Health on the revised plan for the reserve for the accessory structure.
That's correct. So it's gone through initial review, and I spoke to David Pierce, and he said once I got that reserve area designed, he would continue with initial review. So I expect that fairly shortly.
Mark, what's the existing septic system?
Existing septic system is, on this one it doesn't show up, there's a small rectangular box just to the south of the existing residence.
I see it.
Right, that was, I didn't do the original survey or develop the existing conditions plan. That was done by another surveyor, Brian Houston, and that area was shown. It's, for some reason, the labeling is omitted here, but on the plans to the health department, it's noted. And the existing well is located between the two structures, and that will supply water for both of the structures.
You said there's another existing well on here, it's north of the...
There is.
Is that just for the gardens?
That's only for irrigation.
Okay.
That's non-potable water.
Other questions?
Also, the the pond requires a 100-foot setback to the pool, does not?
No, it's actually 35-foot setback from the pool to the sewage disposal.
Okay.
Yeah, absorption fields, I should say.
Right.
Other questions from Mark?
Are they gonna be needing like a farm road for equipment, gather flowers? or anything like that?
It'll just be just a network that they have now. So they will, there's an existing pathway located. You can see
Sort of
that-
where the new driveway had been cut.
Yes. But they're also in the process, you can see on the plan, it shows gear fencing. So the entire area is going to be fenced. And from my understanding, they've begun that fencing, has been out to the property. And so I'm assuming that network will now be internal within the fenced area.
So they're going to extend the fence farther than we show it there and almost to the tree line there, or?
It's within the proposed road. It's not that far. The driveway that was proposed.
Right.
It's on the.
It's now inside the fence.
In between that road and the flowers. It's in between that.
The fence is between the road and the flower.
Yeah.
Yes.
That doesn't
We need
make
to
much.
I hate to
The
interrupt, but
existing-
we have to ask you to come up to the microphone, just because other people probably wondering too after where this is going to be.
Kim Rogers, their proposed driveway that was proposed, and it was like here, and the fencing is in between that proposed driveway and the flowers. So,
Fencing where fencing is shown on the,
yeah, but the driveway came in and was gonna go around like this.
So how are they going to access the flowers if the flowers are inside the fence
I
and the
don't
road is
know.
outside the fence?
I haven't been around it to see, maybe they have extra space in between, I don't know. But the poles are up now.
They'll have a gate to get in there, and they'll have to basically use what they have an existing program with Sue that they've been using for putting in the beds. putting
Right.
material in the
All
fence.
construction of the beds are done. They're done. There'll be no more expansion of those beds.
Okay. So, but I still don't understand, if the road is outside the fence, what good is the road?
What road are you talking about? There's no road around the fence.
Well, there is, but
It's a path, not a road.
All right.
it's pretty roadish.
So somewhere there has to be a gate to get in to the deer fence.
Yeah, but then why have a whole road if you just have one access? Anyway, just
That I can't answer.
I was on one of the original site visits, and my recollection is this road is an area that they've been driving over. This is made a road, it's not a road per se.
oh, they cut it afterwards.
They're cutting the road afterwards.
Oh, after our site visit?
After our site
Okay.
visit.
The
So,
reason I asked my question is there was a comment that the road that was cut in before any permit was granted is going to be restored, totally restored, right?
They're going to have to do is restore the stone wall and the apron area down by the road. If they need what they have up there just for agricultural purposes to serve the beds and not access to the road, then they can, they have the right to have that for that purpose. Yeah, they have it for that purpose, but no, they cannot use it to access the property or leave the property.
Okay.
Anyone else? Anyone from the public wish to speak? Okay, everything, so you're okay with the driveway no longer being moved? It's-
I'm perfect for that.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear it. Good to hear it.
Thank you.
Could I hear a motion to close the public hearing? Second. All in favor? Very good. I have a resolution, I think under here. Hopefully with all the proper references. Okay, you already heard the preamble, so we'll get right down to the business here. We affirm our prior classification of the proposed action as type 2 under seeker, for which further environmental quality review is completed. In the matter of the application for special permit, we find the proposed work and intended uses are consistent with the general standards for all special permit uses set forth in Town Code, Chapter 125, Section 12567. The approval of the special use permit shall be expressly contingent upon the implementation of the conditions of approval for 3 area variances granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals on May 16, 2018, case number 956. Specifically, and I quote, "The granting of these variances shall be expressly contingent upon the use of this property for residential purposes only. There shall be no commercial use permitted by the granting of these variances. Any change in use from a residential single-family home shall require any and all necessary approvals required by the Town of Rhinebeck zoning law." C, further finds the proposed work classified as detached accessory dwelling by conversion to be consistent with the standards detailed in Section 125-20A, 12568E, and 12573A of the Town Code, and grants the requested special use permit conditional upon the receipt of a site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, approves the application for site plan review and approval under Town Code Chapter 125, Section 12578, and authorizes the chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan and provide copies thereof to the applicant, the ZA, ZEO, and building inspector upon the applicant's satisfaction of the following conditions and or requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. Submission of the site plan as cited above for stamping and signature in the form and number specified under Town Code Chapter 125, Section 12578, subsection, except as may be modified as to number by the chair. Payment of any outstanding fees or reimbursable amounts due to the Town of Rhinebeck with respect to the submission, review, and processing of this application, and the related application for special use permit under the Town Code Chapter 125, the town's fee schedule, and the execute escrow agreement. And I think we also need to add to this 3, approval of the Dutchess County Department of Health for the proposed sewage disposal system for the accessory structure, which I guess is currently under review.
It would be the accessories, it would be a
Reserved field for the accessory
principal
structure.
residence and the new accessory structure.
Correct.
Can
Yes.
I ask a question?
Yes.
about the resolution?
Yes.
What does the condition mean?
Which condition? It cannot be used, it cannot be rented for Airbnb, it cannot be rented for worker housing, it can only be used as a family structure for guests of the family, things of that sort. It cannot be used for monetary gain.
And that doesn't affect the cut flower business?
No, the cut flower is totally separate from this, yes.
Did the zoning board of appeals wish to prohibit the simple renting, long-term rental of this?
Apparently, it strikes me that they did, yes.
The ZBA discussed this issue with the applicant. The applicant agreed to the condition prior to its inclusion in the ZBA's resolution.
And if at some future time it was used, let's say for an Airbnb, then what would happen?
That would be a violation of the zoning law of the approval. Among other things, the planning board would have the right to hold a hearing and withdraw the special use permit from the site plan. There are other means of enforcement that we could use, but it would, there would definitely be a violation. It would be an enforceable violation.
Thank you.
And this all follows, if they transfer title to someone else, it all follows with the land?
Yes,
That's
oh,
correct.
absolutely, yes.
I would make a suggestion that the resolution include a provision that conditions of the area, compliance with the conditions of the area variance be made a condition. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I think it's spelled out in more detail. So
It probably
be on
was.
the decision.
Does everyone understand what John's referring to? I mean, make
Not
sure that, what?
Not exactly.
Okay, well, John's saying he wants to make sure that in our approval, one of the conditions of approval is that complete compliance with the conditions placed upon the variance approvals by the ZBA are part of our approval as well, and therefore must also be respected and at any time necessary enforced by the town of Rhinebeck if necessary.
That's a good suggestion.
And
Just a quick, stupid question. If they had done this the other way around and just made the barn into an accessory structure, would all these restrictions have applied as well?
I honestly don't know. I think part of the reason for the restrictions is the size of the accessory structure and the size of the variance granted.
That's right. The big concern when this was before the zoning board of appeals was the fact that the structure that's going to be accessory so far exceeded square footage maximums on the zoning.
Thank you.
Okay. In taking this action, the planning board, and we will get that language correct in there in terms of compliance to the ZBA conditions. In taking this action, the planning board further authorizes the town zoning enforcement officer and/or building inspector to file a receipt of the above-cited drawings stamped and signed by the chair, which refers to building permit, subsequently served for occupancy use for the proposed accessory dwelling and new principal dwelling by conversion of the existing barn and related limited site improvements on its determination, both the terms of this resolution and all other applicable codes, laws, rules, or regulations, including but not limited to provisions of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code, and the purview of the CEO and or building inspector have been satisfied. Could I hear a motion to approve? Second. Okay. Any discussion or further comment? I will poll the board. Eric?
Aye.
Edna? Sharon?
Aye.
Melody? Woody? And I vote aye.
Thank you.
Okay, our next public hearing, this one is on Boomer Hollow. This is the application for a community solar array to be placed upon the, I guess the run-in sheds, I think it could be referred to, along Mill Road. I have request from the applicant to reschedule this to September 17th. He is enlisting the service of a visual analysis firm to do a visual study of this application, as we have done with another solar project we have before us. Once that material is submitted to us, we are then going to be submitting it to our visual analyst expert, George Janes, for his comment. And we feel that probably that can't happen by our next meeting, August 20th. So the applicant has requested that we continue the public hearing to September 17th. However, we have published that this public hearing will be open tonight on this particular project. So if anyone would like to make comments upon it, they certainly can, recognizing that the public hearing will be continued until September 17th. And I suspect it will go on a bit longer than that as well. But if anyone wishes to speak tonight to this, they certainly can.
Good evening. I wanted to reintroduce myself to the board. I'm Matt Allen with Saratoga Associates, and I have been retained by the project sponsor to prepare the visual assessment that you just mentioned. It's come to the attention of the project sponsor that the neighbors are interested in the visual characteristics of the project, so the applicant is going to bring that visual study forward, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to let you know that we will be preparing that by September 17th.
So we will then have the public hearing at that point, but at the same time, it's unlikely that our person, Mr. James, will have had a chance to review your study and report back to us by the 17th. So as I said, probably we will be on the 17th and probably then be going right into October.
Understood. Thank you.
Anything from the member of the planning board, any comment you care to make? Okay, I guess at this point, could I hear a motion to continue this public hearing to Tuesday? Very good. And it will be at what time? 7? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you. Okay, our next public hearing is Joel Hearn and Susan Puckbaum, and I have a resolution here somewhere. While I search for the resolution, you can explain what we're doing here? Okay, actually, I can explain what we're doing now. What we're dealing with now is there was an application for a single-family residence to be built on this property, as well as a stream restoration project. That has been dropped. The application before us has, it's basically a new application, it's been revised. This is strictly to build a single-family home in the area adjacent to a historic structure which requires site plan review and planning board because of the location of the home. Other than that, that's why we're here tonight, for that particular reason.
Thank you. George Rodenhouse and Shaw representing Susan Hotbaum and Joel Hearn. So You have seen this before, as was said, this is only an application at this point, on a 10-acre parcel in the RA10 district for single-family residence. It is a residence of about 1,300 square feet, energy efficient, two-bedroom house. All the dimensions comply with the zoning law, all the setbacks are more than adequate for the zoning law setbacks. The one issue that was of interest to a lot of board members, particularly when you use the driveway, which is a long driveway coming in back to the house. That driveway is approved by the fire department. It now includes a turnaround.
George, if you could speak up, I guess.
We can't hear you.
Okay. The driveway now includes a turnaround, that's a back-in turnaround right here at the request of the fire department to allow two trucks to get in, one to get in and one to back out behind the other truck. There's also a widening of the driveway at several points that were requested, and another pull over here, pull out that's allowing two trucks to pass in the driveway. So as I said, that's all been approved now by the fire department. It is on the banks of the Lansing Hill. We have a septic area down in this area, which we knew near the house. That's also been approved. The engineer, we believe their engineers looked at these drawings and approved them. So it's a fairly simple application. The house, which is proposed, to show you that, you can see that in your application materials, designed by Bob Fox and Scott Dunn is the architect on that. It is energy efficient and intended to be very compact and low impact on the landscape. So we have right now, we have any questions.
We do have a sign off from our engineer in terms of the driveway and then the house site. And we do have that on file. So,
We have the letter from the clerk.
we have a letter from the fire department. All righty, I think the site visit was done by Eric and myself. Eric, you want to?
Yeah, we visited the site, looks like a very nice site. The driveway doesn't look particularly problematic from what we saw. Looks like a very, very pleasant site for what should be a very nice house. I don't see any problems with it.
I concur, I didn't find any problems with it either. So it's a beautiful site. It's a nice area. And I see Karina coming up with the CAB report.
It looks good.
Now, we do like succinct. Okay. Members of the planning board, any questions for George? Anything you'd like to ask at this point? Okay, members of the public, any questions or comments you care to make, please come up to the microphone and identify yourself.
Good evening. I'm Bert Nelson. I'm the nearest adjacent neighbor to the outbound property. My wife and I live right here at 463 Mill Road. Just want to point this out. After I reviewed the application that Mr. Herman was outbound submitted, I prepared a letter to you which you should have received. In that letter, the pertinent message was that my wife, Carol, and I have no objection to your considering and granting permission for the building of that house, as long as it meets whatever the applicable rules and regulations and law are. I did ask you, however, and respectfully request that you again remind Mr. Herman was hotbound, as stated in writing, clearly by then acting zone enforcement officer Michael Tremble in a letter of December 7th, 2011, quote, the access point at which the old Fox Hollow Road joins Mill Road on Ms. Meyerson's property, and that's now the Herm Hotbound property, is not an approved access point for that property. And that refers to this little strip of land and anything beyond. I thought I was done. I actually thought I wasn't going to be speaking at all tonight. But then what happened is, shortly thereafter, I received the notice of the public hearing, the formal notice. Nothing surprising in that. But enclosed with the notice was a letter from Mr. Herman Southtown, which said, in pertinent part, quote, "Some of you," speaking to dear neighbors, "some of you had an objection to our using our only access to the southern half of our property to repair the erosion to the stream bank. The planning board, as it turns out, cannot adjudicate the issue which is holding up our house application," close quote. I'm an old student of political science, and that seemed a little odd to me. Anyway, what I found is that that simple statement tends to obfuscate the reality of what's going on with this. So let me give you some background. You may or may not have it, but I think you need to review it as you consider this application. One, there is only one approved driveway for the Herm-Huckman property, and I don't think that's a dispute. It's right there. The driveway was approved in accordance with the town of Rhinebeck zoning laws. And more recently, you've done some adjustments to it that you thought were appropriate. Herm and Huckman have agreed to them, as you heard from Mr. Rodenhouse. The driveway, that approved driveway, is the only approved access. Now, I must respectfully suggest that the planning board has both the authority and the responsibility for administering and interpreting the zoning laws of the town of Rhinebeck. That doesn't go away because a statement was made in the two neighbors letter. On May 7th of this year, when the original dual applications for house and other things was presented here, Mr. Herm acknowledged that he could access what he's now referring to as the southern half of the property by using his approved driveway. At that meeting, he referred to using, if you recall, a bobcat to move materials from the driveway further into his property. In my view, if the applicants wish to have a second driveway or a second access, they need to apply for a second driveway. And I have no objection to their applying. I may object if such an application is before you and I have an opportunity to speak to it, but it's not before you now. The clear implication of the Dear Neighbors letter, and this is what was so troubling, is that it implies that the applicants intend to access the southern portion of their property or perhaps other portions via what they inaccurately call, quote, our only access to the southern half of our property. In fact, they may not even ask whether they may do so, but instead, as they have done repeatedly in the past years, they may simply do whatever they wish in terms of accessing on a non-approved basis their property. Merely approving their application to build a house while ignoring the brazen but inaccurate assertion that the planning board, quote, that the planning board cannot adjudicate the issue would be a serious mistake and, in my view, an abdication of your both authority and responsibility. The planning board must do its job, notwithstanding the vague claim that it is without authority to adjudicate. The fact is that a validly constituted quasi-judicial administrative agency in New York State, like the town of Rhinebeck Planning Board, does have authority to interpret, administer, and resolve disputes, if any, about existing law under its jurisdiction. So you are not without authority to act, nor are you without responsibility. I have 3 suggestions for you to consider. You can consider any one of them on its own. any two together, any three together, or you, at your discretion, may ignore them completely, but I'd like to share those suggestions with you. First, I suggest that you seek the advice of your counsel before you take action that you may feel unsure about. Second, I suggest that you approve construction of the Herm Hotbaum house as it's been proposed with the specific condition that only the approved driveway may be used to access the property. And third, if this is offered to you, I think you should receive and accept an unequivocal statement from Mr. Herm and Ms. Hotbaum or from their attorney acting on their behalf that they will only use the approved driveway until and unless an additional driveway is approved by the Rhinebeck Town Planning Board. Finessing an issue by low-key seeming innocuous actions is not forthright, nor is it appropriate. The building of a house can be approved in this case, but the authority and responsibility of the planning board for administering the application of zoning law must, in my view, be protected and conserved. Thank you for hearing me out.
I guess the response I would make, and John will correct me when I go off the rails, is the planning board administers the zoning law, but is not authorized to interpret the meaning of the zoning law. That's what the zoning enforcement officer and the ZBA, that's their responsibility. On this issue, the zoning enforcement officer, a couple of years ago, did speak to this issue, saying that the old Vauxhall Road is not an approved entrance and approved access point to the property. So that's already on the record. That was not challenged, so that still stands as the interpretation of the use of that particular point, that abandoned road on that property. Now, that does not mean that Mr. Hearn cannot at some point apply for use of that, because he certainly can. But at this point, he cannot use it. That determination has already been made that that cannot be used. When the subdivision was approved from Ms. Meyerson, the driveway that is currently under investigation, that is part of the approval of this application, was approved. That was as the only access point to that property, and that remains so to this day. So there's no action we could take today under this application that would permit the use of the old Vauxhall Road as an access point to that property. But that doesn't deny Mr. Hearn the opportunity, if he so chooses, to make application to do so.
That is eminently clear, and I appreciate the clarification. I must therefore conclude that the statement that Mr. Hearn and Ms. Hotbaum sent to me, and presumably our other neighbors, that, quote, the planning board, as it turns out, cannot adjudicate the issue, which is holding up our house application, close quote, either refers to something else or is inaccurate. But as long as what you said is a fact, I thank you.
I believe it is, John. Is
Yes,
that-
I believe Mike is right. And
That's fine.
the quasi-judicial board in Rhinebeck is the zoning court of appeals. And there's, the quasi-judicial board in Rhinebeck is the ZBA. And their charge is to interpret the zoning law. I will say that, given the history of this application, I think that it behooves the planning board to be very clear in its description of what the approval is, and I think that we can do that. And then if there are any issues with regard to the driveway going forward, it will have to get sorted out. Mr. Hearn will have the ability to apply for approvals to use that access way if he chooses to do so. If it's used without approval, then your recourse is to bring that to the attention of the zoning enforcement officer, along with the letter from 2011, and that's the person that will be in charge of enforcing the law upon receipt of the complaint.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, we have site visits. Any questions or comments from members of the planning board?
I have a silly question.
There's no such thing as a silly question.
The old Fox Hollow Road that was recently mowed, and I was just wondering which property owner
Mr. Herman, what?
Just what they
Keep the question.
Was it the real mower you had to push, or was it a rotor?
No vehicles were involved.
Anything else from the planning board?
Mr. Trimble, may I just speak to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say comments from the public.
Okay.
So please, you step up to the microphone.
Yeah. There is a difference of view about Fox Hollow Road. Our neighbor, Butte Boucher, who owns the next adjacent property over here, owns almost the entirety of Fox Hollow Road. There is an existing easement that allows some access to a portion of it. I don't believe this issue is before this planning board at this time. And Ms. Boucher could not be here this evening because she's in Denmark. She has a home in Denmark and in fact has decided and has put her property on the market. But since she owns Fox Hollow Road, the overwhelming majority of it, I'm assuming that whoever purchases the property will care for it as they would the rest of the property that is being sold.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments?
Quick question, Michael.
Yes.
If the grass had been mowed with a riding mower, would that have been some violation of the?
Well, since the riding mower probably would not be licensed for use on a New York highway, I would say no. Not a bad question, though.
Just trying to make it a little easier next time.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
A move?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, I have a draft resolution. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board acts as follows on the application by Joel Herman for site plan review and approval to authorize the construction of a single-family residence at 443 Mill Road in the Rural Agricultural Zoning District. We reaffirm our prior classification of the action as type 2 under seeker, for which further environmental quality review is precluded. With regards to the policy of the town's LWIP, finds that the proposed actions as depicted and or described in the above referenced submissions are consistent with those policies. With respect to the application for site plan approval, approves the application inclusive of the site plan and supporting documentation, including site plan produced by Rhinebeck Engineering and dated July 2nd, 2018, and sign-off letter from town engineer Ray Jerkowski dated July 23rd, 2018. Authorizes the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above-cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of the local conditions and the requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. 1. Submission of the above-cited drawing in the form and number specified in the Town Code, Chapter 125, Section 12578B, except as may be modified to a lesser number by the chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements, and including their own required stamps, seals, and certifications. 2. Payment of any outstanding fees and or reimbursable amounts due to the Town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of the application subject of this resolution. Okay, could I hear a motion to approve? Move. Second.
Second.
Any discussion? We'll pull the board. Woody?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Edna? Sharon?
Aye.
Melody? And I vote aye. Okay, we have one more public hearing tonight. And this is Dunga Von Stoddard at 362 Rhinecliff Road, special use permit, site plan approval, and location. This is an application, Captain Whitman representing Dunga Von Stoddard for special use permit, site plan review, and approval under Town Code Chapter 125 zoning, sections 12569, 12573B, and a wetland permit under Town Code Chapter 120, wetlands, to authorize the construction of a detached garage, swimming pool, and pool house at 362 Rhinecliff Road within the RA10 zoning district, local road revitalization area, Hudson River Historic Landmarks District, and Estates District scenic area of statewide significance. Take it away.
is 362 Rhinebeck Road, and we have received the approvals from the zoning board of appeals for the free variance since we requested. That came through today. But we are still talking about the special use permit for the wetlands buffer that we're using. There'll be a garage. We're proposing a garage built within the 100-foot buffer of this national wetlands, which is a pond. And then within the 100-foot buffer of the Hudsonia wetlands that just comes across the north side of the property, we're proposing a pool house, and a fence. And the request for this special use is because there's very little land on the property that's not within the 100-foot buffer of some wetland.
The site visit was done by Woody and myself.
Catherine and you, Catherine Clark, maybe that was.
She's the
It's the
ZJ.
ZBA.
Sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry? Okay, so we've already had the site visit. Oh,
Yes.
wow. Excellent.
Well,
So we
it's
don't have to
done.
hear it again. Questions from members of the planning board?
A quick question comes to mind. When you build a swimming pool in a wetland, then if you empty it out, does it pop up out of the ground? I've seen that happen.
Well, we're not in the wetland. We're in the buffer.
It's in the buffer area.
But that's a high water area, right? I mean, the whole, no?
No, it's really dry in that
It
area.
is dry.
Yep. And there was a pool there a number of years ago.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I do recall, this is the one that's next to the Butcher Boys.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah, we did do that.
We passed judgment on the last one.
Right, and we saw no problem with it, and I believe the CAB saw no problem with it.
No.
We would prefer nothing was happening in the buffer.
But since it is.
Well, not yet, but
Oh, there you go. Okay, any other questions from members of the planning board? Anyone in the public wish to comment, anything they wish to say? Okay, could I have a motion to close the public hearing? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, I will read this resolution. We know what it's about, and we're reaffirming part classification as a type 2 under seeker, for which further environmental quality review is precluded. With regard to the policy of the town's Elder we find that proposed actions as depicted and described in the above referenced submissions are consistent with those policies. With respect to the application for special use permit, find proposed work and intended uses to be consistent with the general standards for all special use permits as set forth in Town Code Chapter 125-67. We find the proposed work to have no adverse impact on the community character or architectural heritage of the Rhinebeck hamlet for objectives stated within Section 12569B. And we grant the requested special use permit conditional upon receipt of site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for wetland permit, based upon review by submitted information, including a habitat assessment compared with Michael Nowicki, Ecological Solutions, finds the proposed work is consistent with the objectives stated in Chapter 120, wetlands, Sections 122 and 123. Grant the requested wetland permit conditional upon receipt of site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to site plan approval, we approve the application inclusive of the site plan and architectural drawings prepared by Catherine Whitman and dated March 7, 2018. Authorize the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of the below conditions and the requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. Submission of the above cited drawing in the form and number specified within Town Code Chapter 125, Section 12578B, except as may be modified to a lesser number by the chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements, and including all required stamps, seals, and certifications, and the payment of any outstanding fees and/or reimbursable amounts due the town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of the application, subject to this resolution. Can I hear a motion to approve? Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Eric? Vote. The voting?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Edna?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Melody? Woody?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Okay. Thank you all. All right, what we still have to do before we get to our workshop is we have two procedural resolutions. I'm sorry? Well, this could be a problem. What I have is a procedural resolution for Elise Long and David Webb, but I don't see them here.
Yeah, make it to lunch.
Okay, and you're representing them this evening? Okay, I think what we'd like you to do is come up and just, present what they wish to do.
Tim Lynch, engineer architect for the applicants, Lisa Long and David Webb. So the proposal is to put an addition on the west side of their existing house. It's essentially going to be a studio and workspace, and along with a carport, park a car inside the house. They also have plans for a arbor and some fencing in the front yard to help define the front yard space a little bit and begin improving the appearance of the house and property.
Questions for David?
I'd like to commend you on the clarity of your drawing.
Just for the record, as you know, we did have some issues before about the alleged outhouse and what was going on with that. That has all been cleared up. The building department has signed off on that no longer being an issue. Any further questions with it, maybe between the property owners, given its location seems to be straddling the property line, but that's something for property owners. That's not a zoning issue, not something we would bring up. So there's currently no violations on the property or limit our ability to process this application. Okay, if not hearing any questions, I have a procedural resolution. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the applications by Elise Long and David Webb for special use permit and site plan review and approval to authorize the construction of an addition to an existing home located at 19 Russell Avenue in the Rhinebeck Hamlet and Overlay districts. As depicted and otherwise prepared and described in applications for special use permit and site plan and approval prepared by Tim Lynch, Rhinebeck Engineering. 1, accept the applications and supporting documents as adequate for initiating review by the planning board of supervisors and the public. Classifies the proposed actions as type 2 action under seeker for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded. Schedules a public hearing on the application for September 17, 2018 at 6:40. And directs the clerk to undertake or otherwise cause the noticing and posting thereof in accordance with the requirements set forth in the Town Code, Section 12566 and 12577. Who would like to go to Rhinecliff? Eric and Sharon? And Sharon, to conduct a field visit to the project site and report their observations at the time of the public hearing. In accordance with Town Code, Chapter 9, Conservation Advisory Board refers the application to the Town CAB for review and written comment concerning environmental factors. In accordance with Town Code, Chapter 118, refers the application to the Town WAC for review and written comment concerning coastal consistency concerns. In accordance with Section 239 of the General Municipal Law, refers the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Economic Development for review and advisory opinion. I believe also it says an historic house. We will also refer this to the town historian for her review and advisory opinion. And 8 authorizes without prejudice to any information or comment that may be presented at the public hearing or may arise on the basis of both the above cited field visit and referrals, preparation of the working draft of approvals resolution for the planning board's consideration on September 17, 2018, or as may in later time. Would I hear a motion to approve? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Very good. Okay, you want to get in touch with Eric and Sharon about the site visit and also coordinate with the CAB and WAC. Right?
You have a card?
Yes.
Okay, our next procedural resolution. This is going to be an application by Facebook LLC for special use permit and site plan review approval. Authorize the construction of a new spa, pool, and pool house and sport court with associated landscape improvements at 120 Hells Road in the RC5 zoning district. And Mark will take us through it. It's multifaceted. I'll share here with you.
We have one here. Mark Levinsky, representing Shade Spring LLC. It's also Gretchen Moore and Savannah. Property is located at 120 Hells Road, and the total parcel size is just under, it's 9.337 acres. Shown on the site plan is on the right side of the site plan are the existing conditions of the property, and also on the left side of what's being proposed. So starting with these existing conditions, there's an existing residence, pool, and fencing located on the east side of the property, the rear of the property, pond located to the north. There's also a New York State DEC freshwater wetland located on the west side of Hells Road. Regarding that state wetland, I've noted the approximate location of the limits of that wetland just for illustrative purposes. I don't feel it's close enough to any of the improvements that are being proposed for the application, but it can certainly, if the board sees necessary, to be delineated. The pond located on the north side was field located. John Decker did the site survey of the property. The property also shows the existing vegetation, trees, shrubs, and as I said before, improvements located on the east side of the property or the rear of the property. On the left side of the site plan is what's being proposed, and it's also what I've shown, I've attached on the sheets that I gave you. There's a color illustration of the proposals for the application. And simply with regard to structure, there's obviously landscaping and some landscaping lighting, surface treatments, fencing. It's all detailed on the plans that have accompanied the application. But essentially, it's construction of a pool house, a spa. Those are all in alignment with each other. The pool in the middle, to the south is the pool house, and to the north is the spa, and then to the east of that is a sport court that's being proposed. The plans prepared by Wesley Stout and Associates provide quite a bit of detail on the treatments that are being proposed for the property. For the improvements, all setbacks have been met, so no variances are required. There's an existing site zoning table that also accompanies the site plan. Other approvals required would be, in this case, the pool house is proposing to have a bathroom facility with it, so that will require application to the Dutchess County Department of Health for connection, what I'm hopeful for connection to the existing sanitary system. It'll be very minor use or additional use for the property, so I'm hopeful just a simple connection to the existing absorption field. I'm in the process of working on that application with the health department right now. This particular application requires, so it's for obviously a site plan application, a special permit. The special permit listed for this application is for major excavation for all the improvements in the back. Total disturbance area it's very small. It's about a half an acre of disturbance area, but still will require a special permit for major excavation. There's also a wetlands application, and the reason for that wetland application is separate, not to the DEC wetland on the west side of Dulles Road, but to the pond. There's an existing deck on the north side of the residence, and the proposal are to have some grass steps that will be constructed. So they are within the 100-foot adjacent area to the ponds. That prompted a application for wetlands disturbance. And then finally, because it's within 500 feet of agricultural properties or that are in Agnes or 20, it also has a requirement for an ag data statement. And so those materials have also been submitted with the application. It's just some changes made to the existing residence in the rear of the property. The associated landscape architectural plan show some, so there's like a demolition plan, like removal of the pools and fencing. A few trees, I think it's 2 trees and 1 shrub that'll require removal, and then also there's one of the landscaping that will supplement that. Those plans also, as I said before, detail all the surface treatments in that area. And what I'm developing right now will be some detailed grading, minor drainage associated with the improvements, and there will also be some fencing. So the grading plan will detail some elevations, which there's been some thought in doing that to limit the amount of fencing required as required by code for the pool, and also the sport court. Those are detailed on the landscape architectural plans. None of the fencing heights exceed the allowable heights by the town of Rhinebeck code, and then the use of some retaining walls in order to supplement those fences in order to provide safety for the pool are also included in the application.
I note that our planner failed to include the application of wetland permit in this resolution, so we'll put that in.
Okay.
He's being docked for that. Any questions for?
Yeah, what's the difference between a sports court and a tennis court?
That's a good question.
All right.
I think it's lined out as a tennis court, but I mean, it'll be a hard surface that we can have other activities on.
Okay, but it's not going to have a fence like a tennis court.
No, it's only a 4-foot high fence that goes around it.
So it's going to be a frustrating tennis court.
Well, I guess it requires a decision.
Maybe pickleball.
Other questions from Mark?
I have the sports court. The lighting, any?
No, all the lighting is shown, so no, not on that plan. If you look at on the other plans, it's all lighting that is, there's no poles.
So they're not going to be playing at midnight?
Not playing under the lights.
Well, what sport do you play?
Other questions from Mark? Hearing none, shall I get into this resolution? Hearing none, I will. Okay, the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the application by Springside LLC for special use permit, site plan review and approval, and wetland permit under Town Code Chapter 125 zoning, section 12568 NN, 12573, and 120, to authorize the construction of a new spa, pool house, and sport court with associated landscape improvements at 120 Fells Road in the rural countryside RC5 district. Accept the applications and supporting documents prepared by Mark Ruminski, PE LSPC, as adequate for initiating review by the planning board, its advisors, and the public. Classifies the proposed actions as type 2 action under secret for the coordinated environmental quality review is concluded. Schedules a public hearing for Monday, September 17th, 2018 at 6:45, and directs the clerk to undertake or otherwise cause the noticing and posting thereof. Delegates, planning board members,
I'll go.
Edna,
I'll take
Ed, and Woody, to conduct a field visit to the site, project site, and report their observations at the time of public hearing. In accordance with Town Code Chapter 9, Conservation Advisory Board, we refer the application to the Town CAD for review and written comment concerning environmental factors. In accordance with Section 239 of the General Municipal Law, refers the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Economic Development for review and advisory opinion, and authorizes without prejudice to any information or comment that may be presented at the public hearing or may arise on the basis of both the above cited field visit and referral, preparation of a working draft and approvals resolution for the planning board's consideration on September 17th, 2018, or as may be later timely. Do I hear a motion to approve? Second. All in favor? Very good.
Just one other question for the board, John. So the application includes all these improvements. With regard to the construction of the improvements, can they be phased?
I don't see why not.
Right. You know, separate building permits could be issued for, like, for example,
So,
maybe it may take a while to get approval from the health department for
Yep.
that pool. They may want to start construction of the sport court. You know,
so for two things I was thinking about for the next meeting, if you submit a phasing plan, then that can be just incorporated
Okay.
into the resolution. And also, I don't know if any of the board members are interested in elevations on the, so you can see the fence or anything like that.
I mean, I don't know if you saw, John, if you got copies of it, but there are details
Oh, okay.
I'll leave the large plan for you. There's a detailed set of,
Gotcha. Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
I'll leave this set for you, John.
Okay.
Mark, is the issue on the pool, the issue of the bathroom unit for the pool, or?
Yeah, it would be,
Or is
the
it
pool
other
house,
issues?
it would be the pool house there. And they may want to start construction of the sport court as soon as they gain approval.
So the pool and pool house will be built together then?
More than likely, right? But I just want to have, and I'll discuss it with the applicant, but I just wanted to bring up whether or not the board was receptive to phasing for the construction of the improvements.
It's a logical approach to get it done. Absolutely.
We can do that. You can come and speak to me so that, we put a resolution together, assuming we haven't hired a real planner. We can make sure that the resolution is properly expressive.
I'll submit a request for phasing.
Okay, very good.
So
Yeah,
that,
if you send something in to Michael by email, that would be good, and then you can
Right.
just, if it's acceptable, you can just copy it over. It'll also allow you to circulate to the board in
Everyone
advance
take a
of
look at it, see how
the
it's
next
going.
meeting, so that if there's any comment, then
okay,
we can maybe even talk to you before the next meeting about that.
right.
What's the bathroom consist of?
Just, it's no cooking facility, just a changing room and bathroom.
Toilet, shower?
Toilet. I'm not sure about the shower, I'll find out.
Okay. I see there's an outdoor shower.
Yeah, it's an outdoor shower.
Is there also an outdoor kitchen on the?
There is an outdoor kitchen located.
Yeah, just below.
Yeah, no, it's right there.
Okay,
It's
right there. And what does that consist of?
There's a detail of it on the landscape architectural plans.
And because they're not adding a bedroom, just the adding that bathroom shouldn't kick in a whole other requirement on the septic system is what you're hoping?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, the occupancy remains the same.
Right.
It's just the connection that they need to improve.
Plus, in this case, so when the septic system was installed, the health department had different flow requirements for bedrooms. So it used to be 130 gallons a day, now it's 110. So I'll take that surplus and, that would more than accommodate anything that would come from a small bathroom or pool house. Thank
You're all
you.
set? Thank you, Mark.
John, would you like copies of these ones?
No, thank you.
Okay, we have one more procedural resolution before our workshop. This is Juliana Van Metren and Clarence Boylan. This is a presentation of an application for site plan review and approval to authorize construction of an addition to an existing dwelling at 631 River Road in the Historic Preservation District 20 zoning district. Water revitalization area, the Historic Landmarks District, the Estates District, scenic area of statewide significance.
Better visuals.
And I'd like to comment on the fact that when they presented this at our pre-application meeting, we were very impressed, and we thought we should make this a requirement for
Yes, that's a good
all
idea.
building approvals in the future.
The model maker comes down, doesn't it?
So you'll have to hire Mr. Miller, because this is rainy day project. My name is Christina
It
Ducharme.
doesn't light up.
It doesn't light up, no, I almost dropped it on the way in.
Don't do that.
My name is Christina Ducharme, Architecture.
Very nice.
This is his existing residence in the front. And then the addition.
Is it bigger than the roof?
And we also produced this lovely rendering for you.
Wow.
So this is about 1,000 square foot addition to the existing residence. It's located in the HP 20 district on a 683 acre parcel of riverfront. The application is in front of the ZBA for an area variance currently. It meets all of the setback requirements, parking requirements, building height, other requirements. The applicant is proposing to demolish an existing non-original addition that comes off of the back, which is detailed in the drawings that we received. The addition is currently in poor condition, and in its place, he's proposing to build this post and beam structure. And there's some minimal lighting that's being proposed. The landscaping is mostly existing, and that's all outlined in the drawings that you received. And in addition, I thought it would be helpful to show you photographs from the road to show the visibility or the lack of visibility from River Road. Well, I thought it would help if I sort of explain what they are because they don't have captions. But this first one is the view of the entry gate and the driveway to his. There's multiple driveways onto the property, but this is the driveway that leads to his house, which is the first driveway from
The bridge.
From the bridge. Right. So it's pretty near. And the building where the addition is being proposed is basically behind these trees inside of this. This is a similar view, just looking closer towards the building in question. So you can see that it's not really visible when there's foliage on the trees. It is a little bit more visible in the winter months. This is looking south on River Road, just for context. This is looking north on River Road. And this last one is a view if you're standing at the house looking towards his driveway. So this is in on the private property, just for context.
This is not visible from 199 at all?
It's not visible from the road. And then in addition, we thought it'd be helpful to present, the lighting is very minimal, it's really just lighting around the deck. These are lights that the applicant currently owns that he would like to use on the deck. And this is something similar just for context, since there's no cut sheet for that. And these are the lights that he's proposing to use on the house. This one is included in your package. That's the house, just so you will know.
What's the orientation of the addition vis-a-vis the river?
So the river is parallel to the addition, and that's shown on the site plan. So the site plan's on the first page here, and this shows you the scale of this property. This little blow up here is this. So the river runs like this, and the addition runs parallel to that. 20 years more.
Any questions?
What is the area variance for?
The area variance, I think it's because of the historic.
No, the area variance is the square footage of the
Square footage.
accessory structure will be greater than is permitted in the
In the H
20 district.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm confused.
What's the accessory structure?
Yeah.
that's,
The
This
house
is-
is the accessory structure?
this is an accessory structure.
Oh, I
This
see.
is, this is on Orlot, the Meadows,
Oh, okay.
Ileana's property. And this is one of the outbuildings on the property.
All right.
I guess no more questions? Okay, I will read. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows in the application by Ileana and Veteran and Terrence Boylan for site plan review and approval under Town Code Section 12573B to authorize construction of an addition to an existing dwelling at 631 River Road in the Historic Preservation HB 20 zoning district. Accepts the application and supporting documents as adequate for initiating review by the planning board as advisors and the public. Classifies the proposed action as an unlisted action under seeker for which coordinated environmental quality review is concluded. Schedules the public hearing for Monday, September 17th, 2018 at 6:50. And directs the clerk to undertake or otherwise cause noticing and posting thereof. Delegates planning board members.
Oh, welcome.
Okay, now who's going? So you three are going? Okay. Melody, Edna, and Eric, okay. The last time I did a site visit, though, we had tea and cookies, so I just thought you it's very nice. Okay. In accordance with Town Code Chapter 9, Conservation Advisory Board refers the applications to the town CAB for review and written comment concerning the environmental factors. In accordance with Town Code Chapter 118, refers the applications to the town WAC for review and written comment comment concerning coastal consistency concerns. Refers the application to the town historian. In accordance with section 239 of the general municipal law, refers the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Economic Development for review and advisory opinion, and authorizes without prejudice to any information or comment that may be presented at the public hearing or may arise on the basis of both the above cited field visit and referrals, preparation of the working draft of the approvals resolution for the planning board's consideration on September 17, 2018, for as may be later timely. Do I hear a motion to approve? Second?
Second?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Okay, you want to coordinate with them on the site visit and with the CAB? Oh, okay.
Stress skin pen near the outside? Stress skin.
Okay. We've reached the point of our meeting tonight where we're going to do a workshop on the Hudson Solar situation. Sharon is recusing herself. What I'm going to do is ask Melody to hand out an outline that Edna and Melody, and with a little teeny bit of help from me, put together to direct our discussion tonight. I've asked Wade Jurkowski, our town engineer, to join us, and John Lyons, our lawyer, to also join us for this discussion. I'm going to go downstairs because we're given a site plan which I want you all to be able to take a look at and see. It's still...
Same spot as this one.
Okay. I'm sorry? No, I'm good. It's just for... Okay, I wish you could...
I was talking to you very pleased to hear that.
That's right, it's the block.
Well, she can bring it up. Michael, she can bring it up and you can.
Okay.
You're taking it up.
And this is all very good. What this is tonight is a workshop. It's not a public hearing. The public hearing will recommence on August 20th. This is for us to go over what we know, what we don't know, questions we have, to discuss where we think we are with this application. What I would like to do is use this outline and then initially, as we go through it, ask each of you to speak to the issues that are raised here. We can go around a couple times, then we can maybe have a general discussion. But I want everyone to have the opportunity to speak to these different questions, these different issues, but do so in a way that we can hear everything that's going on and basically be coherent with what we're doing. So, having said that, in preparation for this meeting, I asked the applicant to provide us with a site plan with a narrative of potential future use of the remaining portions of the property, given that the intent at this point has not been to lease the entire property. And I also asked for, what else did I ask for? Three things. The lease agreement, yes, as they relate to the operation and maintenance of this facility. You've all received those. I hope you all had a chance to read them. What we have here is what was presented as a site plan. And if you could make sure that Ray gets a copy of this.
It's easier for you to work up
Yeah,
together.
we can even bring a chair around.
What's on the...
Oh, we can do that too.
I know it's great.
Yes. Yeah, excellent. So let's switch it back here. Who wired this building? Okay. stretch it, if you could sort of point that towards us. Since this isn't a public hearing, it's take a look at this. Okay, this is what I received. It's a, basically it's a survey map of the property done by the Decker company. It shows the proposed position of the array in here, and the lines for the area that they're proposing to lease are here to the property line and here. Okay, it's this area right here. Right here. Right. So what I'd like to do first is go through what we have here. This is the current site plan we found. There were some questions that we had about this, and I'll just run down these and then we can discuss them. I'm going to sort of go through. I'm going to start with you, Eric, down there. Once I just present these. We had some concerns about the driveway road resurfacing, adequacy for emergency vehicles, impact of the equipment needed for delivery and installation, stormwater runoff, given the proposed driveway plan, setback issues, if any, parking during construction and for longer-term maintenance, location of any existing well or septic field, location of the existing and proposed new plantings required for screening, and other type of issues, basically related to site plan. This is the site plan that we have right now. So basically, I'd just like to get your comments on this. I know you've just probably seen this for the first time. I know that the other material was digital, and I was able to send it all to you. This was not digital, so this is what we have. So Eric, what do you think?
Well, I think that there's no screening to the, let me see, that would be the northeast. And that was where one of the, when we were at the site, we saw, the corner of the array from. So that's the first thing that comes up. Second, about the storm runoff. Have we ascertained that these panels are have no impact on the runoff, or does it represent a impervious surface?
We have not. That's one reason I asked Ray to join us tonight, to look at this and see what issues of site plan that we would ordinarily ask for. You just saw what Mark discussed with that thing for that particular residence, things of that sort. What we don't have here that we should have on the site plan.
So regarding the stormwater, I can tell you based on the review of other projects within the area, DEC normally reviews these projects associated with the solar panels on these type of installations as not requiring a SWIP, even if it's over the 5-acre area. Reason being is because DEC reviews the panels themselves are impervious, but the ground underneath them is pervious and is able to take up the water. So unless the trenching associated with the project, if that exceeds the acre, my apologies, not 5 acres, but if that exceeds an acre, then it would need a SWIP. But generally speaking, okay, they do not consider the panels themselves as part of that 1 acre disturbance, because again, they're posts that are pounded into the ground and so forth. So we reviewed several within this region for DEC, and that's the way that they conducted the review. It will still require erosion control, sediment control plans to be submitted for construction. So that would still need to be a requirement, which based on the plan, they have not submitted as of yet. So that will be a requirement. But again, they'll have to identify how much trenching is done, but I would expect, based on what I see, it would fall under the acre. So therefore, a SWIP would not need to be submitted. They'll still need to take a look at, as was identified, the roadway surface or driveway, what surface that's going to be, what improvement that may require. If it's just utilizing the same driveway entrance without any improvement, again, that's not part of a disturbance. If for some reason they're proposing to regrade that existing drive for whatever reason, that may be considered a disturbance, and if that breaks the acre, then we may be back into a SWIP. So we'll need better clarification from the applicant as far as what the disturbed areas will be. And also regarding the driveway, I'm not sure whether the highway department has been notified of the applications? I understand it's an existing trail. but-
There's an existing action, it's the width of the driveway, but we have no idea if it can, withstand the weight of a fire truck, for instance.
Right, and that was another question that I have, is whether the planning board has submitted anything to the fire district for
We
comment.
haven't yet, and that's something we need to do, absolutely. And it's also something I think we probably ask you to look at, because one of my concerns is being, we want to be able to get emergency vehicles in and out if something should happen. And just as we did with Mr. Hearn for private residents, I think that the same standard needs to be applied here as well.
Yeah, and in some instances, we've been involved with reviews where the fire company actually likes to have access within the fenced-in area as well, to be able to drive around the entire panel, staying within the fenced-in area, rather than trying to fight it from the outside of the fence. So again, that would be helpful, obviously, to gain their input. And again, whether they would require Knox box or something of that nature at the gated entrance.
We definitely need to contact the
Well,
fire
if
department.
it had a fire truck between the panel and the fence, then it's obviously not enough room for it right now.
Correct, based on what I've seen. But again,
Yeah.
I defer to the fire company and the
Sure.
fire district for how they would attack a fire or an incident at the location.
It's flammable, Ray, in a typical.
Traditionally, it's really the wiring as far as an electrical part. It's not the panels themselves. Again, panels are not, you have the metal frames and so forth. The stanchions are all metal, but really it's just an electrical part.
Well, aluminum sort of gets funny under fire, but
Well, it will bend and so forth, but again, it's not that it's flammable. It's the electrical components that could, again, through a short or overloading, potentially could cause a fire. And again, the fire company may be called out at that point.
also in terms of screening, we had talked about having, we had talked about having some of the screening material inside the fence to keep the deer from browsing it. If that's the case, that has to be,
Changed.
well, it has to be looked at as well, just because that requires extra work.
And no.
On this, what we're saying is, these are all things that we want indicated on the site plan, correct?
Yes, yes.
So first, some answers will be needed, and then whatever is decided, it needs to be on the site, including parking, et cetera.
Yes. Melody?
My recollection, or my sense when we were on the site during the site visit, was that the walk up to the location of the panels is a difficult walk. I can't see emergency vehicles making their way up without improvements to the driveway itself. It goes up and down, there's wet areas. I just feel that really looking at the need for some improved surface for these vehicles is something critical that we need to be taking a hard look at.
May I ask how that would be decided? Would that be Ray or?
Well, I think Ray can certainly answer, the fire department would be one resource in terms of telling us
We probably start with fire.
what the surface would be that they would want to see there, and then, maybe Ray can help us out with the weight of construction vehicles and delivery trucks and other things going in and out of there. And you may need to make a site visit to look at the field conditions yourself.
Yeah, I've already been out once before when we did the desktop study, but again, I actually would have to make a second trip just to, I was concentrating on the noise, not necessarily roadway surfaces and things of that nature, but point well taken. And again, I'd like to hear from the fire company and see what their thoughts are, and then work with them as well as the planning boards providing recommendations as well.
I will contact the fire department, tell them what we need from them, what we would like to have them do a site visit and give us some guidance on this. Woody? In terms of the site plan, I think one of the things that probably was a failure, certainly on my part, is for almost every application we do, we want a site plan, we want a proper stamp in the site plan, given the information of surveyor, land surveyor has to do it, an engineer, plan of different things such as what we're discussing right now are necessary. And we spent a lot of time working about a number of the other potential impacts of this project, but we sort of overlooked this, I think. And now I think we're trying to catch up and basically do what we need to do as we would do for any other project. So that's, and I think we've pretty much identified, I think, a number of the issues. I think we'd like to see with the topographical type of a design as well, just so we can see exactly what the terrain is. I think that's important as well. So I think that that's, the site plan deficiencies is something I think that we can correct and will correct.
And to that point, other than the site plan document that was submitted by the applicant, do you know, has there been any mention of a Caesar study being conducted at the site? So the Caesar study is a study that's done by Central Hudson. So the applicant makes a submission to Central Hudson. Central Hudson then takes a look at the potential for the interconnection and identifies any improvements that have to be made to not only the interconnection of the site, but also their infrastructure along the roadway, just to confirm that it has the capacity.
So I just wanted the precursor to even.
Yeah, I believe that they have spoken, but we will definitely confirm that.
And I can have that as one of my comments as well. So CSER stands for, I see the look on your face. CSER is a Coordinated Electrical System Interconnection Review.
Of course.
Coordinated electrical.
System Interconnection Review.
Did you get that down? Because I didn't, so.
So it's CSIR.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gretchen?
And it's referred to as a CSER.
Well, we're going to get to that.
One other issue about the, there was mention of fire and then there was mention of screening. I mean, I'm just thinking about, surrounding this whole thing with low shrubbery and
We're going to get next to, if you look at number 2, that's where we're going to get into it.
Okay.
But there's another issue that, we need to look into. It occurred to me that with the number of plantings that are going in here, they're going to need water.
Yes.
And so I looked into whether, what facilities exist on site. And what I found was that on the parcel access, on the card for the property, the barn, according to that, was built in 1980, and it has private water and a private sewage disposal system on site. So I spoke with Kimberly downstairs and asked, okay, do we have a building permit? Do we have a CO, whatnot on this property? And we have no record of any construction on the site for this. So I called David Pearson at County Health to ask whether or not they had any record of SDS going in. And he told me this afternoon that they have no record of an SDS there. I don't know if he has further information. He called me back later and I wasn't able to take the call, so I'll find out. So part of the site plan obviously is locating where is this SDS, where is the well, and we also may have some building violation issues we have to deal with, something without a permit or any sort of approval from the health department. But we'll get into that. But that would also be issues that we need to have on the site plan, where these different facilities are located. Obviously, with any amount of planting going on, and given the year we had this year as an example, you need to have decent water on site, or none of this stuff is going to survive. And I think that's important to consider. Anything else about site plan that occurs to anyone at this moment?
So could be a required cleanup of the multiple bits of debris on the property?
Yeah, we'll get to that. That's a good question.
It's a little bit further right down.
Okay.
Landscaping. One thing that I think is obviously one of the key ingredients here is landscaping, is the screening that we need to have on this site. And I know that that's been the neighbors, I think their primary concern. There has been some suggested landscaping using white pines, for example. As we think about this, obviously, you want a multitude of species of plants used for landscaping. Right now, white pines are basically, they have some serious problems. There's a fungal type disease that you're seeing a lot of white pines really suffering from. You get white pine, you need to get a lot of different things, and white pines, unless you're right there, constantly monitoring, caring for them, they're not necessarily going to be the best thing for landscaping. In a discussion I had with a couple people, we were wondering if it would not be appropriate to require a professional landscape firm to develop a landscape screening plan for this site, designating species, how they would be planted, how they would be established, to really effectively, over the long term, landscape this site. It's something we can certainly require. It's within our purview to do so. I think that it's probably a good idea, just given the conditions that we're going to be under, given the stress of deer, given the stress of weather, things of that sort, we're going to need to have someone who really knows how to put together a good landscaping plan for screening for this. You know, variety, how to plant it, where to plant it, how to care for it, what you're going to need to do to keep it alive. Clearly, whatever we do here, we require that this screening survives for at least the 25 years that this permit will allegedly be enforced for.
I also think it'd be a good idea to not make it just look like a parcel screened off by trees. I mean, make it feel a little more natural.
Well,
than just a- yeah.
that's it. Using also the shrubs very often are the lower level things which you absolutely need to screen as the trees get bigger.
Right.
You would like to have something like that.
So a variety of things and not just a straight line of stuff, you know, to where it's not.
If we're talking about landscaping, where?
That's,
On the fence line, on the property line, in between, that's got to be determined.
exactly, and that's part of what I think a landscape designer could help us with, to show, okay, how do we have to do this to screen this? What's the most effective way? Where should the material be to be most effective?
Right, and
That's-
working with the visual impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a professional should be able to help us with that.
I also think that a plan like that is going to be a very useful tool for if an approval is granted. I think given the concern in the neighborhood about visual impact and the amount of attention that I anticipate this board is going to give to the idea of screening, I think what you would want to come out with in connection with an approval is a plan that actually sets forth, okay, you're on this site, this is the vegetation we're requiring, specified, this is exactly where it's going to go, so that somebody else can go out there 6 years from now, take that plan and be able to assess whether or not everything is still in compliance with the plan.
Well, the existing, the site plan that was presented to us does not seem to me to adequately convey the existing conditions on the property as they are now. And since we've talked about annual inspections, or, you know, certainly 3 years, maybe even sooner, going out and doing an inspection, what are you looking at it against, without a very clear baseline
Documentation,
to start
baseline,
with,
yeah.
in terms of what are the existing conditions now? What are we looking to see added as screening? Because we need both of those to do a field visit where we can adequately say, this is surviving, it's not surviving, whatever. So I think not only are good landscape plan, but in existing conditions, and maybe that can be done with good aerial photography or some other way that isn't really, and you may have ideas about that, Ray. Does that make sense to you?
Well, yeah, and I think aerial, again, whether it's aerial photography or even the technology that's available through Google Maps as a baseline to create the record as far as the existing conditions, the existing vegetation and so forth. I think it's a valid concern, and I think it should be tracked as well.
We're talking about setting up landscaping around it, and we want to check it X number of years. Are we setting precedent for everyone that we put a landscaping plan in place that we have to go out and have it checked on a periodic basis like this?
The only thing that's required in this law for solar plants, periodic checks are required, an extra renewal of the permits. For other things, other uses, other commercial uses, once we get a
Is that
special
defined
permit,
in the zoning law?
yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. For other uses, we don't do that. We can. We have the ability
No, I know.
to do it if we wish to. But the only thing that in the law requires us to do it for is solar power.
Okay, thank you.
So we are required.
So there'll be
Yeah.
a maintenance and replacement plan for this vegetation?
Yeah, there would have to be. Edna?
When we talk about landscape maintenance, it seems to me that we're not only
talking about the things that are going to be newly planted, but other screening that is required to obscure the installation.
Yes.
And that other screening is not necessarily within the 7-acre area. You know, a lot of it is near the boundary of the property.
Well, also, on the map here,
That's one of the problems I have with that screening to the south is that it's, you know, okay, if you stand there, it's green, but if you stand over there, it's not.
right, sort of just, these are the proposed trees that will be planted. But this is sort of the wooded area here, hash mark, the wooded area here. And there isn't a lot here, which I think once again is the baseline that we need to know what is here. That is one of the issues. The problem that does come up. Yes, sir. You're right. You must remember talking to the mic, yes. So that we have an auditory record of this.
We could have told that out loud, though.
Yeah, but then, yes, that's what we've said in the plan, what's been proposed to us is that a lot of the existing vegetation on the site is intended to be a significant contributor to the screening of the installation.
And therefore needs maintenance. For example, invasives that will eventually kill a tree. And there are lots of cedar trees that are being used for screening. But as Eric has pointed out previously, there are deciduous trees which in a very short time are going to shade out the cedar trees and
Yes.
they're going to die. So they're going to have to be controlled. I mean, there has to be a plan or a way to do this.
And hopefully that's what, if we get a landscape plan, hopefully that will be part of it. Exactly, not just what's going to be added, but what exists there, how that will be maintained. I think that's part of it, no question.
So any secondary use of the property will still have to maintain all the elements of screening that would.
And that's something we need to wrestle with. How do we require that? How do we ensure that that happens? And that's another thing we'll be discussing here as we move along this evening. On landscaping, any further comment anyone wishes to make at this point?
Well, there is a question here that was raised about the preparation of the installation site and how much vegetation is actually going to be removed from the location. And it goes to your earlier question, like if we're taking out cedar trees and other trees in order to do the installation, where's that debris going? How's it being disposed of? Do they have to grade the site after? Does that add to any issues of stormwater runoff? I don't think we really know how the site itself is going to be prepped in advance of the installation and what impacts they may have both in terms of disposal of the debris.
They did make mention of that during one of the
Did they?
meetings, and they said all they do is just, they'll get rid of the cedar trees that are in the place or the.
But what about the stumps?
But then, well, unless the stump is right below where they're gonna drive these things in, all they're gonna do is drive these, I think it's hat sections or something into the ground, and then mount the panels on top of that framework. So it's very low impact in terms of, disturbing the soil and disturbing the site.
Well, do we know that from this site plan?
Well, your point is well taken. I think that a narrative should be prepared by the applicant that identifies exactly what the prep work will be. So again, that way the board has it in writing, rather than speculate. Because I don't disagree.
Well, we asked them that question, and that's what they said, but they haven't, they haven't put it
But it
down
isn't in
right.
writing in the site plan.
That's correct, that's correct.
But in addition, if you're going to plant pollinators, you have to do something to prepare.
There has to be some sort of
How's it
soil
going to be done?
preparation.
Chemically or, tools or that's not right.
That's something that I think we do need to have a narrative on, exactly how you prepare the soil for this. If stumps are going to be removed, and they're of any size, very often we'd have to bring in other soil to replace from the soil while you took out. We'd have to do some regrading.
It is possible to do it without that. You can put down tarps over that area, kill off existing vegetation, then sow your seeds for your.
So what we really do need is, okay, how is this going to be done?
Right.
That would be the
The
narrative.
preparation of the site. And they'd have to do that before they actually install the panels, because otherwise the tarps aren't going to be very effective. They'd be constantly interrupted. And also, I think that we made it clear in our zoning law that herbicides cannot be used in terms of site preparation. It has to be a non-chemical solution to do that. And to maintain the pollinator garden as well, it cannot be, chemicals cannot be used for that purpose. Okay, I think we've discussed some of the other stormwater control. Time and length of proposed construction. Equipment noise on site, grounding of steel hoist generator. I don't believe there's going to be a generator. I think we were told there will not be a generator.
But during construction,
Actually, yes, there probably will be. Yeah, there probably will be for that. But then it will not be part of the actual facility. Okay, additional future uses of the property planned by the property owner. That's one of the things I asked for because I think it's critically important that we know what else. One thing they're allowing in this law, generally on a property in the town of the zoning, we're allowed one principal use on the property and accessory uses. Under the solar law, they've permitted two principal uses. I'm not quite sure why, but they've allowed two principal uses. So it is possible that another use that you could find in the use table allowed in the RC5 district, certainly residential uses and a couple other uses, would be allowed here if they could pass muster. Part of my concern with that is how that would potentially impact the screening that was required. And I think that it's been presented to me, and I think it's a valid concern, that clearly the screening from Wurtemberg Road looking in is vitally important. And a lot of that is outside of what's the proposed leased area for this project. We've had some preliminary discussions with our attorney to find out, okay, what can we do to ensure that screening is not eliminated through another use that might be proposed for the property. As a permit, you can do single-family residence, I believe two-family residence, things like that. So the planning board wouldn't necessarily have a great deal of control over that, what they choose to do on that area, if that was indeed what was going to go in. We have been discussing with our attorney the desirability of the entire property being leased for this function, to ensure that the screening stays in place, that there is no intrusion into it, that it does not in any way, shape, or form clear from the site. And I think that my understanding is that legally the planning board has the authority to do that for this project. But I'd like to hear what you all think about it, and we'll start with Eric.
Is the primary, second primary use, would that be the residential use, would it be a second primary, or would that be a secondary?
That would be a primary use.
Okay.
But there are other non-residential uses which are allowed in that district, which there would be sufficient land left over, given this particular lease arrangement, that could potentially, that would be allowed in the district if it could pass the different conditions that would be.
That's what I was wondering, what particular ones have been discussed?
There'd be two primary, yeah.
The one is not primary and one secondary. It allows for two primary
I
uses.
understand.
Yeah.
But you said that a residential use would be a primary use.
Correct.
So then there would be another secondary use still available?
There'd be accessory uses. There'd be accessory uses to the primary uses, but not a third primary use, no.
Okay, so that would be the accessory use. Okay,
Correct.
so what other accessory uses would be?
Well, garages, swimming pools, tennis courts, all that sort of stuff which goes with anything that would be considered a normal accessory use to a residential use
I see,
of
okay.
property. anything
But
like
not
that.
agricultural use? Not,
Well, agricultural uses are allowed throughout, except in the hamlet of Rhinebeck. Agriculture is permitted as of right throughout the town.
so there could be three primary uses. There could be
Agriculture
residential,
is not, yes. Similar to what's going on with the cut flower farm.
okay.
That's not considered, that's a residential property, and that's the primary use, but agriculture is allowed throughout. And so it's not looked upon as a primary use, in other words, you're entitled to do that. A lot of people want to keep horses. If you have enough acreage, you can keep horses on your property, animals, things of that sort.
Well, would grazing of animals outside the screened area be acceptable?
Yes, it would be permitted. And then my understanding is yes, it would be permitted. And if you had goats, you'd have issues.
It seems to me, I like the idea of requiring that the entire property be leased. The exception to that would be if the owner could say, this is precisely what I would like to use it for, so that we could then set that as a condition, right? But to just not know if some future use maybe, I think is too dangerous given the need for screening.
Yeah. Although I would just say that I think this is a good topic to be discussing at the present time, although it's premature, right, in the sense that what needs to take place here is to receive a proposed landscape plan from the applicant. That plan is going to spell out, you know, how it's going to be done and how much land area is going to be required to accomplish the screening. And then you're going to take a look at that plan and figure, and you have to look at issues like whether the screening is sufficient or whether you're going to be considering other techniques besides just vegetation, like a berm or a fence, to assist in the screening. So, and then ultimately you need to figure out whether, in order to impose a condition, there has to be, as we discussed earlier, there has to be a good solid nexus between what the condition will accomplish and accomplishing a goal that is set forth in the zoning law. And certainly, the way that the solar provisions of the zoning law are written, they are, and of course you have some mitigation authority under seeker too, but you just want to make sure there's a solid nexus between the condition and what you want to accomplish. And so where the vegetation is going to have to be in order to be properly maintained and protected and all that will be key to the question of how much land area ought to be devoted to these.
However, my sense from my memory of the visual analysis is that there are existing trees on the property near the border of the property that are helping
Yes.
screen,
Yep.
and they need to be protected.
Yep. And they also need to be identified specifically on the baseline, even if you're just using aerial photography or something. The landscape architect ought to be identifying significant plants that are going to be, that would be part of that are going to be
Integral
considered to be part of
screening.
the screening scheme that ends up being.
And the visual analysis should help with that.
Yes.
So Michael, other than agriculture, what would be another,
Didn't we get a list?
I think we're chasing our tail here, going around in circles, spending a lot of time on it. Because all, in my opinion, the applicant has to say is, at this time, I have no future plans. And that goes away all your other stuff that you're trying to imagine might happen. Think about it.
no, I understand that, so he says he has no other plans, but,
It's the end of it.
Well, maybe or maybe not. I think that if you look at the wheel application as an example, and that was in front of the ZBA, and there was concern about using the accessory structure for rental, which we discussed before. The applicant was asked in that case, look, we're uncomfortable with as a board, we're uncomfortable with the idea of that being rented. We are more comfortable in granting the variance if you're willing to voluntarily agree to the condition that precludes that. And that's how that condition ended up.
that seems a better resolution than just the,
That the applicant's going to have to define what's going to be out 20 years.
Well, I think what the concern is that the applicant's going to conduct another activity on the property that's going to somehow degrade the vegetation or change the property in a way that alters the screening situation.
That may be, but then that has to be addressed at the time the incident happens, not,
No, I think
well,
it's,
pie in the sky, what might he do 10, 15 years from now?
There's some handle on it, because for example, where the well is located, that has to be understood, that has to be made accessible to this property for both planting and maintenance of their landscape. Things of that
My
sort as
concern
well.
is it's being suggested that we have the applicant tell us what he's going to do, what he plans to do. And if I were the applicant, I would say, at this time, keywords, I have no plans to do anything else other than that. And then if that plan comes up again 10 years down the road, then it's a new issue and it has to be addressed as a separate issue, not,
And it will
I don't
be
think we
addressed.
can.
Well, to John's point though, if we say that, okay, we'll grant this, this variance for this, if you'll agree that you'll not use the property for anything else other than, if we say residential property, residential use for that portion of it or whatever. But so that would then be voluntarily do it.
And your point is good, Judy, your point is good.
But could you do it a different way and say that the use wouldn't result in the reduction of screening, or, I mean,
Yeah, why not?
can you back into it that way? Like,
Well,
is
it would
that-
have to be something like that at a minimum, I think, to protect the integrity of whatever
Yeah.
gets
So
granted.
he doesn't, so we're not maybe requiring him to tell us what possible use he might have, but we are requiring him to state that he would not reduce the screening necessary as determined by this landscape plan.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's productive to think about this only to a certain point right now until there's something more concrete in front of you with regard to the screen.
John, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, go ahead.
So since the project is before the planning board for site plan, as we've identified, any future proposal, even if it's residential, wouldn't that still be a requirement to come back before the board for a modification?
absolutely.
A modification of the site plan?
absolutely.
So technically, the planning board at that time in the future would have a second bite at the apple.
That's true.
Is that true? Why is that true? I mean, a residential building does not require a site plan.
But this project
It does.
requires a site plan, so any modification to this site, which is the entire parcel,
Well, that's the rub.
That's the
It
That's
may
one of
not
the issues that
be,
we
it
have
may
right now.
not be.
Yeah, right, it's not the entire.
Just the
parcel.
leased area.
but the project itself is, I mean, the approval goes with the, not the lease area, it goes with the parcel.
Well, that's,
That's a question for our attorney to assist us with, because it's a good
I
point.
mean, normally, if you're talking about using, say, as for an example, a space in a shopping center, and the change of the use in that space, which is leased from the owner of the shopping center, the site plan, if the other infrastructure is already in place, would only affect the leased area.
Unless, well, in those cases.
I
but
mean,
if
even though
they
it'd be
modify, but if-
technically, it'd be a modification of the site plan. I think that, I think that the board needs to see what the proposal
We need to see a landscape plan, and know exactly what's required to screen this to our satisfaction. I think having the leased area presented at this point is premature, because we don't know if that's what a proper landscape plan will entail, and maybe more than that. Go further down towards Woodbury Road.
And I suspect with more detail and with the input that Ray is going to give with regard to sort of fleshing out the site plan, I think it will probably be more apparent to you just looking at the plan as to whether or not that's something the board needs to be thinking about going forward.
And to define judges least on the
Yep,
basis of.
yep. But it can be done.
Well, may I ask, are we suggesting that existing foliage required for screening be on the site?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if it's outside the so-called.
If it's going to be part of the screening, it has to be on the plan.
And if it's outside, then perhaps it shouldn't be outside.
All right, if that could be done, I think that will answer a lot of questions.
I think that's part of the challenge we have before us, and the information we really don't have right now, that we need for, proper complete site plan for this project. So, okay. Another issue that's come up is, are we okay with, sort of exhausted that one? Okay. The existing uses and character of the Wurtemberg Road neighborhood. a real effort was made to try and identify what characterizes that area. Now, shall I just go down this list quickly for everyone? Rural atmosphere with sparsely sited single-family homes, historic hamlet, several structures in the National Register of Historic Places, the church, bed and breakfast, quiet, tranquil, pastoral, attractive scenery, scenic road with light traffic, parallels heavily trafficked Route 9G, and other things that you might wish to put in there. The reason we need to identify this is we need to identify it because part of our law requires that we are able to identify whether or not something such as the solar farm would negatively impact the characteristics which characterize this neighborhood. And I think we've made a great effort along those lines, through the visual studies we have done, through the noise study, through all the different things that we did do to try and identify potential impacts which could negatively impact us. Eric, where do you feel we are with this?
Can you think of other words that define the character that we haven't included on the list?
Not specific words, but I don't see how this project is in any way in keeping with any of those things, other than the fact that you can't see it or hear it. So, I don't see how there's even a connection between the two.
This section is really just trying to define what the character is.
Oh, okay.
We're not moving ahead to the question of mitigation.
Well, Michael did
Well,
talk
I
about
did.
the impacts to those characteristics.
And then that is one of the next things, the next issue. Have we,
So, I mean, in terms of the look of it, in terms of the use of it, in terms of the nature of it, is that it's a commercial, industrial operation, and it's in this kind of neighborhood. So, I'm not seeing how we're actually making any, other than the fact that you can't see it, smell it, or hear it, it's not.
and
Well, not in keeping with the neighborhood. We have a zoning law, a solar law, that allows solar farms in virtually every residential area, I think, right?
Subject to review.
yes.
Okay. So the town board has decided that the mere existence of such a solar facility is not detrimental to the character of a neighborhood, assuming that conditions are met to take care of, to mitigate any issues, particularly the issue of screening. So to simply say that it's, quote, commercial and therefore is not in keeping with the character of a residential neighborhood is essentially to disagree with the law, which I don't think the planning board has the authority to do.
We administer the law, but we neither interpret nor amend.
Right. I mean, I can imagine a condition under which a solar farm would not be in the character, within the character of a neighborhood. Let us say that if the proposal was to put it in a valley surrounded by a residential area with no possibility of screening because you're looking down on it. Okay? I would say that in that situation, the planning board should probably not approve it. But I think just based on the fact that it is a passive commercial use, the town board has already decided that that is allowable in these residential districts.
Subject to review.
Subject to
Okay,
review,
because
right.
so with a special use permit, which is what's required for this, you're correct that, the town board's made a decision that this use could go in an area like this. But the flip side of that is that all of the special use permit criteria need to be met by the proposed project. In other words, what the town board is saying is that we're, as a land use policy decision, we are open to the siting of these facilities in any district in the town. But we're also saying that we are cautious about the siting, and that's why there's so much significant detail set forth in the solar law provisions having to do with special use permit criteria, and then the general special use permit criteria also apply. And if this board decides that the criteria is met, then the project is approved, subject to conditions. If this board decides that the criteria can't be met by the project as proposed, then there's a ground for denying the application.
Right, but merely relying on the quasi-commercial nature of something, I don't believe.
It's not quasi.
All right, commercial, passive solar nature of it, simply based on that, I don't believe that the planning board has the authority to say, based on that, we're not going to approve this. Because it's a commercial use in a residential neighborhood.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty straightforward.
There's going to be an opportunity to debate the impact of those characteristics as they apply in the special use permit criteria as you go forward before you head as part of your maintenance.
Yes, but I'm not talking about all of those things. I'm talking about one single thing, that it is a commercial use in a residential neighborhood.
I think,
That's already been settled.
Has it? You said it's subject to review.
no, I think what, if I may, I think what Ed was saying is just as the label commercial use on its own in and of itself is not sufficient reason to deny something being placed in residential, because we have a whole host of, contractors, landscapers, all sorts of things allowed in residential districts, if reviewed and if they meet the criteria for the special use permit involved. And the fact that they're commercial is not in and of itself sufficient
But
to say no.
this isn't just commercial, it's also, excuse the expression, industrial, in that it's a production of power, and any other production of power would be industrial. But this somehow is not, I'm not even sure what it's characterized, but it's certainly not in keeping with anything that's been there before.
Well, that often does happen as we move forward in
Sure.
time. There are many things now that, 50 years ago would not be there.
Of course.
By one is sort of a complete logical extension of, because it produces power. We've obviously had some issues with generators for people to have them, for their homes within residential areas, things of that sort of thing that function is to produce power, and they do make and things like that. But we recognize the importance of things that really ought to be there. So it's not so clear and cut. Yeah. well, there's that too.
And of course, every individual roof situated solar installation generates electricity. That's what they do. That's true. I'm just trying to make a point that I don't believe the planning board has the power, has the authority to essentially nullify a part of the zoning law. To say, I don't like it, it's commercial use in a residential area, and therefore I don't want to approve it. I don't think we have that authority.
Well, in looking at this list, and I've thought about it, Eric characterized it as you can't see it, you can't smell it, whatever. For me, if I can't see it, I can't smell it, I don't know it's there, I can't equate that to changing the character of the neighborhood. So when I look at these lists, I don't feel the same way as Eric in that it's totally incompatible. I think with a lot of the mitigations we've been talking about and will continue to talk about, that its impact on the character is not significant to me personally.
Woody?
I'm fine.
I think that probably the way Melody and Edna have expressed it, at least that's my feeling as well. We go down the list of things that could negatively impact the character of the neighborhood. And I think if we find that those are all mitigated, that they, indeed, in this particular instance, would not impact the neighborhood, I don't see that we would have a basis for saying no to this application. But we need to know that. We identified a bunch of stuff tonight that we don't know, that we don't have information, that we're not in a position to make this sort of determination, which is why we're doing this workshop right now. It's always going to be an issue, whether or not certain uses are allowed in certain areas. You know, we've had with contractors' yards in residential areas, they become issues. We have mining within residential areas, that can become an issue. Done properly, as I think it has been done by the people that are doing it. Mining, for example, has not been a problem for the neighborhoods where they're sitting. A great expansion of it, I obviously felt very strongly that would make a very negative impact on that neighborhood. So it's not just necessarily the use per se, the intensity of use, it's how it's done, it's, it's where it's done, when it's done, things of that sort. It's not an easy answer, it's not a simple problem, it's not a
That's my
simple
problem
equation.
with the term character of the neighborhood. Who determines the character of the neighborhood? I mean, we would think the neighbors would determine the character of the neighborhood more than us on the planning board.
Well, that's why we're trying.
That's why we tried to do this, because it's actually
But
our
the
responsibility.
neighbors all say, well, I don't care if, I can see it or not, I know it's there and I don't like it. But, so that's the character of their neighborhood then. So I don't know what that, I don't even think the character of the neighborhood thing should be in here.
It has to be.
It has to be.
But if it has to be,
It has to be
but I don't see how it can be, I don't see how it can be compatible with the character of the neighborhood. At the same time, I don't see, so to me, it's like.
Eventually the board, as a board, you will have to make a decision. You may not all end up agreeing on a particular.
We may well have to agree to
result.
disagree. There's no question. And it's not a simple issue, no question.
No.
It's the first time we've had this, the first time is always the hardest. And this is certainly true to form. What we have here under section 4 is things that we feel could negatively impact the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood. Noise, noxious fumes, traffic, wildlife habitat, biodiversity, wetlands, archaeology, excavation, stormwater runoff, lighting, property values, neighborhood character, which, I think is what we were trying to discuss, the view shed, how the screening can be done, other things of that sort. These are all things that could negatively impact the neighborhood, the residents living in a specific area. I think a lot of this stuff we have addressed, and I think we've addressed adequately. I think we identified a number of things tonight which we haven't addressed adequately. We'll be asking for more information and further studies, if necessary, done so that we can address that.
Michael, I'd like to,
Yes.
One thing that we haven't addressed at all, in my opinion, is the existing structure and what will its function be,
The barn.
the barn, the metal building. Okay, I think that should be, if possible, defined, what it's going to be used for, whether it's going to be demolished, whether it's going to be painted pink or whatever, just so we know what the function of that structure
That was
is.
kind of going to the other use, if there was going to be one there.
I think that that's something we definitely need to know. I don't even know how we got there. How we got there. So yes, absolutely that needs to be identified.
I
And,
mean,
I think we
mainly
need some
just
idea.
being a storage shed for the facility, if that's the right thing to do.
Well,
I don't know.
if it's included within the lease for the facility, it could be used as a storage shed or, equipment, something like that, keep them on, I mean, who knows? That's a good question, and we don't know. We don't know what role that would have.
Have we gotten any determination on the property value issue? Has there been a
It's-
study done?
It's very difficult. In New York State, these things are so new, they don't have any real studies. They've done it for wind farms, because they've been a lot more. And the studies that I've seen show that they don't seem to appear to have a negative impact depending on where they are. Along coastlines, things like that, because of scenic value, that may be a problem. In the farm areas, things like that, so it doesn't seem to be a problem. It's been a benefit to many of the farmers because of the rentals, helps them offset the cost of farming. It's, New York State is extraordinarily difficult. Some people, for example, on this particular property, if you live next door to it, would you rather have a solar farm, which is basically you don't know what's there, Or, you know, a two-family residential home, you know, right there, where you're gonna see it, you're gonna hear it. You know, what impact is that gonna have on you?
Well, we
So it
essentially
depends on the
received
individual. Very
We
often.
received 2 letters that were part of the record now. One was submitted by a realtor that said there would be no impact, and another by another realtor that said there would. So I don't know how you, at this point, evaluate that.
My impromptu study told me that, I mean, I asked everybody that I knew, would you want one next to you? And they all said no. So what does that mean? I have no idea.
Oh, exactly, and we don't know. And in a few years' time, there will be studies done, I'm sure, to try and identify what's happening in terms of property values, things like that.
But
We're not in that
So
position.
we have no way of addressing this question right now.
Not in any sort of factual manner, no.
It's a subjective, so
It is. Some people would love to have it next door, some people wouldn't. I mean, individual, people, you know, want, don't want. And we have people moving up here, you know, from more, shall we say, urban areas, thinking they want to live in the country until they smell the cows, and then they get complaints about that. It's too dark at night, we want street lights, you know, why don't we have, you know, things like that. So it really depends on the buyer, what they think they're getting into, what they want. I think it is very subjective at this point. You know, we don't have a factual basis to sort that out, to my knowledge.
So it's even worse than the character.
It's less, it's less quantifiable at this point in time.
But
Yes.
you know, there are other things that are allowed in zoning law, which someone might feel would affect the value of the property, like contractor. Even though it's well fenced, screened, whatever, it's a contractor share. And yet they're allowed in various parts of town.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people in Rhinebeck working, you know, who work, basically they're, you know, one-man shop, two-man shop, whatever, builders, things of that sort. And yes, their homes, their properties very often become the basis, you know, ground zero for their businesses. That's true. Commercial land is very, very limited in the town of Rhinebeck. There's not a whole lot of places you can do any business. And so, yeah, that's true. I guess moving right along to approval of this application with conditions versus withholding approval. I think John's tried to give us a basis for understanding how we can review something and what the grounds are for approval or disapproval. And it's, obviously, it's not black and white. It's a decision that we will have to make as a board.
Let me ask this about the reason for approving it. Is the town going to get any revenue from this particularly?
I think, well, you could say from a property tax value, I don't know. That would be the only revenue we get because they would not be a party to this project. There's no applicant or a party owner or anything like that.
All right, so potentially there's no real upside for the town.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, what's the upside of a guy putting in a contractor's yard for his business? I mean, he's going to be the one, you know, she's going to be the one with the jobs making the money. She's going to be the one using that contractor's yard to earn a living. So
Okay.
it's not necessarily a case where the town is going to have, financial return out of this. If that's what you're asking, maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're
Well, I'm
asking.
trying to just see, like we have potential of 100 disgruntled neighbors for approving it. Where's the upside? Where's the downside of disapproving it? Somebody doesn't get to do the business plan in this particular location, but what else is lost?
The upside would be described as the land use policy decision that's been made by the town board to encourage the use of renewable energy generation sources. That was something that the board decided when the solar provisions were adopted. And attention was given during that process to making sure that those the provisions of that law were consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, which they were. And that was all woven into the legislation that was adopted when these provisions were added to the zoning law. So, from a policy standpoint, I mean, the town board's function is setting land use policy for the town, and that was the motivation behind the enactment of these provisions.
And also to generally encourage renewable energy with an eye toward climate change, in the hope that there could be other communities that would do the same thing, so that, electricity would be available and perhaps less expensive over the long term, and we wouldn't have the ocean lapping at our, hillsides.
I don't think we have to worry about the ocean front property here in Rhinebeck. We do have a very nice view. It does, I guess, Eric, it depends on how you choose to look at it, what you expect in the community, what you want from the community, what you see as being a benefit or detriment to your community. And different people are going to see it differently, there's no question. I think we have that here. I think John has done a pretty good job trying to give us our charge with what we're responsible to do, the conditions under which we can approve or disapprove, given the law, give our responsibility. We're not a quasi-judicial group. We are an administrator of a written law, and we have to use it as written. The ZBA has the authority to give relief from anything in the zoning law. That's their function, and they're legally required to be there to do that. We don't need to have a planning board. The CEO is probably the first person who has the authority to interpret the law and decide whether something goes forward or doesn't. And the ZBA is in a position to overrule it or uphold it as they see fit. Ultimately, if you truly feel the law is not in the town's best interest, what you do is you go to the town board and you work to amend that law. You amend it, change it, whatever, because that's the process. That's their responsibility as a legislative body. We don't have that authority. We don't have that responsibility. We have to work with what's given to us and the conditions under which something can or can't happen. If those conditions can all be met, it strikes me as that then we have to say, yes, you can do it. That's just my own feeling, and maybe that's a little black and white, but that's basically how I see it personally. And so I really want to know whether can these conditions be met. I think there are a number of things we've raised tonight. Those conditions have not been described to us as being met, have perhaps not even been properly addressed yet by the applicant, and we have asked for some fairly important information that we need. And I'm really glad we have John Gray here tonight to assist us in making sure we can articulate that properly so we have that information. And then, obviously, we're going to have a few more discussions about this as a board. I don't really know what else there is to say. I guess I'll just, what else would you like to say? I guess really I'll start with you.
We've covered it.
Aaron?
I'm not quite sure what that question was, so.
The question is, what more do you think we should be discussing tonight at this workshop? What further information? Well, yes, we can screen, we can certainly discuss.
I think 6 is important.
Okay.
6 into 7, which are the screen issues that have been raised in the past about screening from where, from what, from properties, from residences. Various terms have been used. Probably worth discussing that. Adjoining residences or adjoining properties.
Maybe you can kick off the discussion of that. The use of those.
Well, my sense is that in a scale of things, if there is such a thing, I think it's really important that the screening be effective, certainly from the residences. That for me is the highest priority. I think it may be impossible in all circumstances to screen from every viewpoint on every adjacent property. From every corner, I just don't know the viability of attempting to do that. I do think it's a very high priority that the residences be properly screened. But again, all of this is going to have to be evaluated against the landscape plans that we get, and I would be hoping that a landscape architect in the field would be looking at it both from residences and from properties, so that they're giving us their best input in terms of what's feasible, what is practical and feasible and effective.
Edwin?
Yeah, I agree with Melody. In addition, well, I don't think that it is at all practical to say to any applicant, you need to go walk every inch of the adjoining properties and ascertain whether or not there's any visibility at all of the installation from that point. I mean, it just doesn't, I don't think you can do it. You know, so I think that the planning board should make every effort to use practical means to ensure that screening certainly obscures it from residences. And
Obscures it and diffuses it, but not blocks it 100% because that's physically impossible.
I agree.
Why?
Yeah.
And put a 20-foot wall up around the entire property, then it's not visible. That's how you do
Not
that.
around the whole thing, property, but you can certainly screen around that solar arrays to where it wouldn't be visible from the adjoining properties.
Well, that we're going to find out, aren't we, from the landscape
Yeah,
architect?
but I don't think that's too high, I don't think that's too high a bar.
We had a definition of obscure earlier, which was.
You can see it, but you can't tell what it is, I think.
And yeah, that's kind of in the general direction.
But I disagree with that approach. I think, you know, I think, you know, especially this project in this neighborhood, if we're going to take into consideration the character of the neighborhood, that, you know, and I don't think it's impossible on this site. I don't even think it's all that difficult on this site to make that, you know, all you see is vegetation, not solar panels. I don't think that's setting the bar too high on this project.
Well, basically, that's hopefully the landscape plan done properly will tell us exactly what's required, what's necessary. For some reason, the routes they've chosen to use in the zoning law, I think possibly the next section, 12548, which discusses screening non-residential uses in residential districts, was perhaps the most succinct definition of what's required, saying any enclosed or unenclosed storage business, commercial or light manufacturing use permitted shall be provided with a fence, screen, and or landscaping sufficient to obscure visually objectionable aspects of such use from adjoining properties in residential zoning districts and or public rights of way. And obscure, that's what we're supposed to aspire to, given the law. That's what we're required to aspire to. And basically, we've been trying to find definitions of it. There are a number of definitions. The one that seemed to be the most clear-cut to us was such that if you were to see any element of something you couldn't identify, you couldn't tell what it was, it wouldn't jump out at you, it would not be what draws your eye to it, draws your attention to it. And I think that is something we can aspire to. I don't think there's a problem doing that. I hope there is. We'll see what the landscaper says. And I think that's what we aspire to.
The other point I want to make is that screening through the use of vegetation is one technique for screening. There are others, and sometimes they're combined.
Right.
And you need to keep your minds open to every, the available practical means of
Such as
creating visual screen.
Such as a berm, for example. I think none of us think a fence per se is necessarily more attractive than what you're trying to obscure. But a properly designed berm and planted berm could be. I think the one along 9G they did down there going south by Moran.
It looks good after all these years.
Once it's all grown in.
Keeps on looking better.
Once it's all grown in, yeah, I personally don't find that unattractive. At first, I didn't know what in the world they were doing. But then, so that obviously is very effective. I mean, we are allowed, the law even entitles us, says fences, berms, vegetation, things like that are all tools we can use to visually screen things. So the door is not shut on any of those options. And whatever is going to be necessary to make it work.
I think the last, number 8, yet to date
Mhm.
in terms of potential condition approval. Do we want to talk about that, or is that something we wanted to figure out?
I think at this point, we're waiting for more information to know what we need to do. I think we need to understand, and John, I think, has made it very clear to us, we have the authority to insist the entire property be leased if that's what's necessary to meet the necessary screening requirements that the law places upon us to properly obscure this installation. Decommissioning and removal, there's a whole, that is required. A complete decommissioning plan is required before we can make any approval. It's part of the law. That has to happen. Annual review of the permit for the first 3 years, we can certainly require that. I think right now the law says we have to do it after the first 3 years, and then every 5 years thereafter to renew the permit. I don't see any reason why we couldn't say, for the first 3 years we're going to do an annual inspection, an annual review to make sure that the conditions that we have required for this are being met.
Question, Michael.
Yes.
When we're talking about annual renewal of permits, you'd say with a professional visual analyst and planning board members. Isn't that the responsibility of the zoning enforcement
Yes, it
officer
is.
and not the planning board?
Correct, it is, to then report to the planning board. The planning board also, I think, we need to recognize, has the authority to revoke special use permits. There's a process that's in the zoning law which details how we would go about doing that if we felt that was necessary.
A question, for a renewal of a permit, would there be a public hearing?
Yes, it would basically, it would
Would
be.
we, in a case like that, send a couple of planning board members?
Yeah, you would do that for the renewal, yes.
Yeah.
But the inspection, if we want to do an inspection every year for the first 3 years, that would probably be the CEO and someone to do that, because the zoning law only requires renewal after 3 years.
But
And then-
if we set it as a condition of approval, then it would require it after.
We could do that,
1 year.
yes, we could do that. Yes, we could. I believe we could.
I think so.
Michael, in terms of decommissioning, is there any history on decommissioning any of these plants?
I honestly don't know, and that's something else, we obviously need more information. What does a proper decommissioning plan entail? What does it include? What's the result?
I mean,
There
do these
isn't,
things go to the dump? Do they go to, where do they go when they're done?
I don't know. I don't know.
There's precedent for cell towers and things like that.
Cell towers, yes, but this is not the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not the same materials, and it's not the same.
I think
And most municipalities have similar local laws identifying decommissioning plans, so there are others that have been.
There are other
that can be acted-
decommissioning plans, but there's no real history of decommissioning any of these things.
Oh, that's correct.
at this point.
Not on a large scale.
I think it's something you could ask NYSERDA about, and they have some idea of the zone. It's, once again, it is, yes, it's new territory.
Also, in 10 years ago, solar energy was nowhere. It's just recently that it's come to produce more, the panels produce more energy than they cost to make them. And it's just very recent, in the last couple of years. Within the next 10 years, we might find out that these solar panels are so outdated that these particular ones are not worth being there anymore, but they're still producing electricity, but they're producing it too low. I mean, it costs too much or something. They're not producing it at the low rate that the new ones are. Is there a plan for that to?
We could make a condition in any approval we do that if any upgrades are going to be done or panel replacement because of better technology, things like that, we'd require coming back to the planning board for site plan and then we could do something along those lines. So that we
And
would
again,
have.
there's precedent for that. That's something that happens typically a lot with regard to cell antennas and things like that, when the upgrade is beyond just normal maintenance that they usually have to come back in.
We have a long section in our zoning on cell towers, how that would happen. And that may be a model we can use, a template we can use for this. And it is pretty well detailed, but obviously it has a greater history too.
Can you go back to number 7 for a minute?
Yep.
I understand that we're going to ask for a landscape plan, but there are some items here that I have mentioned a number of times, but I've never heard anything more about them. For example, the view from the upper story of the adjacent residence, and the plan is to plant trees that are, I don't know, 5 years old or something. In 5 years, they will perhaps obscure. So to my mind, that's not adequate. They don't currently, they would not currently, that's true.
Right.
So something more would have to be done. The same thing is true, I believe, the view from residences to the east, where they mowed down the dogwood in order to get in there. And there wasn't too much to begin with, too wide a strip there. I don't think that there's any sort of, I haven't seen any screening that would protect from that direction.
That may be an area where a berm may be necessary, if indeed vegetation can't do the job.
Yeah.
And a planted berm, like, you know, you have a berm that you plant, you wouldn't really bear road.
Then somebody mentioned having a property with a house site but not a house yet. You know, how are we gonna deal with that?
My own personal opinion is hypotheticals are just that. You may deal with it when you do the review after 1, 2, 3 years, 3 years, whatever, see whether or not you need to enhance the screening because of the new residential structure. And that's the only way I think you could deal with that. You know, who knows, they might just do a 1-story Cape Cod, they might do a 2.5-story Calumet.
And there was some comment, written comment from a neighbor who said that their property was never visited. And I don't know how we deal with these loose ends.
I think the first thing is get the landscape plan, get the site plan, see what's in it, see what the impact it might have to the best of our ability to look at it. We may want to then send it back to George Kins to take a look at again, to see, okay, do you feel from these different areas this is indeed adequate, this would do what needs to be done, given the record we have right now, but we do understand in terms of visibility and the necessary screening of animals. That's probably what we want to do. Anyone else? John or Ray, do you have any other, words of wisdom in Richmond Park?
No, I think the planning board has done a fine job preparing the document that really provides an outline of the items that we need to look at and
That's
consider.
and then Melody did
Yeah,
that.
it's a wonderful, wonderful job.
Thank you.
And again, we'll, once we take a closer look at this, then I'll provide a formal comment letter outlining additional items that need to be provided or modifications, or modifications.
So, talking about logistics for a second, the way to make the provision of comment to the applicant most efficient would be to have one document that follows this workshop that sort of sets forth what the board's expectations are with regard to getting additional information. Do you want Ray to try to encompass everything in his report so that Ray's report can be the document
I
that...
think he's probably best qualified to do it, because the questions we have are technical in nature.
So what I'll do then is I'll prepare a draft, and then I'll send that to the planning board and to John, and that way it can be sent out to all members and any
Kick it
modifications.
around
Yeah.
and come back with suggestions.
Yeah.
Modifications, sure.
At least that way it'll give you a starting point.
Excellent, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Okay, well, oh, we have to go to executive session. Yes, we did a interview today with a potential planner, and I think we want to go into executive session to discuss with the board what recommendation we would like to make to the town board relevant to that discussion. So, there's Sharon.
Finish your work, the workshop portion.
I think,
So in terms of the applicant, it's still, I mean, who is the applicant at this point
for
for this project?
this project, I believe it's still Hudson Solar, Sun County.
They're-
Is still the applicant. We have some documents they
They
gave us.
submitted those
saying that
documents.
Oh, they did, okay.
Yeah.
So what, I mean, was there a change of ownership? Is there,
That there was a merger.
A merger, yes, or a, the bigger fish ate the smaller
Circulated
fish.
and everything, as well as the list of
We've
engineers.
been responding to the applicant, and correspondence to us that said what the guidelines were, and was what, basically no change of the
Right.
name.
Yeah, I think we're still, I think, legally in good shape. As still think we're in good shape. So we're all going to be happy. Ray's going to put something together for us. We'll circulate it, we'll work on it, and when we're all feel that we've hit all the high points and the low points and we're prepared to send that on, that's what we will do as a board. Is that good?
Yeah, and it's possible for me to get a copy of any and all materials that have been submitted to date, including the application, the EAF, and so
Oh,
forth.
we can get all of that to you. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that when I send it.
Gretchen's smiling. Yes, we can definitely do that, and we will do that for sure. And Ray, thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Glad to help out, as I mentioned previously. Anytime you feel that you'd like me at one of the board members or board meetings, please just let me know, and I'll, as long as I don't have another conflict, I'll make sure.
Richard, thank you. This was on short notice. I called Ray this afternoon and asked him,
Oh, nice.
are you doing anything tonight?
You thought you were invited to dinner.
So your son had his birthday party alone, I can't believe that.
What we give up for our
But he did have
professional.
the ice cream anyway.
Yeah, that's right. I get to have the rest of the ice cream when I go home.
John and Kim, your presence and help is all very much appreciated. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Very good. Yes, he has to stop recording, or we could go downstairs for a minute and then come back upstairs. Let's go downstairs and then come back up.
Okay, we don't need to, so,
We always need you.
I don't see you.
All right.
At least you don't have to.
Executive session.
Make the motion in front of the camera.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I didn't, I moved that we get out of executive session.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Could I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. You guys, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Ray, John,